Crazy. And again, two-tier policing claim is extreme. So, I'm sorry, there's
well,
two-tier
there is
policing.
two-tier policing.
I don't think there's anyone sane who's, unless you read The Guardian.
Right.
No one thinks. If you're choking on your chai latte and your muesli right now, maybe you don't think
Keir
there's two-tier
Starmer
policing.
says it's not an issue, but then he's the guy that said they weren't going to raise council tax.
Yeah. Also, here's the thing. You know what, Prime Minister? I think the people of Britain are going to be the people who decide whether it's an issue or not.
Exactly
if most people think something, maybe there's a possibility you're the one in the wrong and they're the ones in the right. I don't know, just throwing that out there. By the way,
true.
Population stats.
Yeah, I know. They're wrong. They're wrong.
Oh, they're wrong, because there'll be more. 5 more Birmingham's added.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. What a rip-roaring show we have for you today, because, I mean, more of the madness that's going on in government, in particular the Home Office, is being exposed today. And whether you are listening to us on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, I have a funny feeling you're going to feel very similarly to me about some of the stuff we're talking about. So we've got a leaked Home Office review, ordered by Yvette Cooper, the brand new Home Secretary, last year in the wake of the Southport riots. OK, fair enough. Let's have a review of extremism. Let's have a review of what's going on. That review, leaked, not produced by the government, apparently now rejected by the government, how convenient, claims that two-tier policing is an extreme right-wing narrative, so it's not a real thing. It's just something made up by nasty far-right people, you know, me, presumably. It claims that right-wing extremists frequently exploit the grooming gang scandal, rape gang scandal, which it described as, I kid you not, the alleged group-based sexual abuse. Oh, I guess all those 13-year-old girls were imagining being raped and abused and tortured and beaten and threatened for all those years. And those 500 arrests, even in the last year or two, the numerous successful prosecutions and convictions, I guess these were all just imagined. But apparently, they were alleged and they were used to promote anti-Muslim sentiment. Well, they wouldn't be able to be used to promote anti-Muslim sentiment if the police, the social care and everyone else had actually acted on it, as opposed to being worried about that and sacrificing young girls' lives and safety and dreams and hopes of a normal life for those community cohesion concerns. I could not be more angry about this. The review also urges police, by the way, after Axel Rudakabana walked in to a dance class with 26 young girls and stabbed 11 of those girls, 3 to death. It is a miracle that more girls didn't die, and 2 adults as well. Their response in their review, after all of the violence of that time, was that police should record more non-crime hate incidents. I don't even know where to start. Home Secretary has rejected this report, apparently, but we've been paying for people to do this report. These people work in the Home Office. These people are people who are advising the government on their policies. It kind of explains a lot about how badly wrong the government has got so much of this, when these are I would say idiots, but actually no, they're evil. The people who are denying the reality of sex, rape, grooming gangs as a reality in this country over the last 20 years are evil liars. The people who think that arresting people for hurty words on Twitter, non-crime hate incidents, and recording them and stopping them going on and being able to get certain jobs, instead of actually tackling the reality of extremism and violence on our streets. By the way, largely, like 80-90% perpetrated by Islamists on our streets. That's most of the incidents, and most of the deaths are a result from Islamist attacks. These people have got things so wrong, they are going to cost lives. And if people like that are being employed by the Home Office, whether they're being listened to or not, they're being employed by you and me, then we have got something horribly wrong at the core of our government and at the core of the policies on trying to keep us safe. Because we're not safe because people like that have any say whatsoever in policy making in this country. So I want to hear your thoughts on all of that. Do get in touch. Give us your reaction. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. I mean, there are so many different aspects to this review which are so wrong. We're going to talk to Andrew Gilligan, the man at Policy Exchange, who actually found this, managed to get hold of a leaked copy of this review. We'd never have seen it otherwise. We're going to talk to him later in the show. We're also going to talk about Donald Trump. His border czar has responded to the Hollywood actress Selena Gomez's bizarre sobbing video over the deportation of foreign criminals in US territory, saying that the administration has no apologies and that anyone who doesn't like it should take it up with Congress. Quite right too. Also, those irritating people at Just Stop Oil. Their activists stormed London's West End last night, interrupting a performance of Shakespeare's The Tempest, starring Sigourney Weaver. They were met with boos, interestingly. I think they must realise the table has turned. So there's so much more to talk about, including many other stories today as well. But joining me right now, rather conveniently, is Claire Pearsall. She's a former Conservative government advisor. She worked in the Home Office in recent years. Now, it's really interesting that you worked in the Home Office. Now, this leaked dossier, Andrew Gilligan at Policy Exchange, the right-wing think tank, well, centre-right, basically most people's views think tank. He uncovered this dossier. By this morning, we were told, no, Yvette Cooper has rejected all of these different plans. But the key thing is, there are people working in the Home Office who think like this, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the real worry. Who wrote this? What job do they have and what influence do they hold over the policymakers? Because I find this really deeply concerning. And I think Yvette Cooper very conveniently saying, nothing to do with us, no, I reject it. Is that because of the backlash that it's got? Because if there wasn't the backlash, that would be in policy-making terms now.
As in, this is what we actually think.
Yeah.
And again, that ties back in with, everyone's a far-right thug who's on the streets. Not everybody who was on the streets post the Southport attack was a far-right thug.
No.
There were far-right thugs, but not everybody.
No, not everybody, and you can't tar everybody with the same brush. I think she put this report, she asked for the report to be put together because she wanted it to prove what she thinks, which it does.
But also, I mean, basically, police recording more non-crime hate incidents. That is what she actually thinks.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how you can. And these are the people who, by the way, think that having extra rules on Amazon selling knives and having two-factor authentication for your ID. Well, that didn't stop Axel Rubicana getting a knife. A, he could have waited 9-10 days and bought it on his 18th birthday. B, he could have got one from the kitchen drawer at home. C, his parents signed for the knife. So they've already got that. They've already got that. I mean, it's just
it works.
I don't know, but my daughter gets stuff delivered. I don't go, what's in your package? Tell me what's in your package. Although I've got to be honest with you, if my kid had been caught with a knife on a bus and had threatened to go into school to commit a massacre and was obsessed with genocide videos, I think I probably would search their packages because that would be good parenting, right?
Well, it would. And the problem that we now have with non-crime hate incidents is that it's going to overwhelm the security services, it's going to overwhelm the police with people being offended by something you've said.
And non-crime hate incidents is basically if anyone, not someone who is, quote, the victim, if anyone thinks that what you have said is motivated by hatred, dislike, of a particular ethnic, sexual, someone's trans. I mean, I commit a non-crime hate incident every single day by saying that trans women are not women. It's a statement of fact, but technically speaking, someone could say, well, I'm offended about it. Feel free to make. I'm actually interesting. In the wake of Alison Pearson, I talked to Alison about this. She's a very good friend of mine. When Alison Pearson at the Telegraph faced what she thought was a non-crime hate incident, turned out actually no, they actually wanted to arrest her and question her and then arrest her for an actual crime. But the way they spoke about it, when you listen to the tape, it's quite clear that why she thought it was a non-crime hate incident. Yeah. It wasn't anything. It wasn't either, by the way, a tweet that she wrote. But I actually, like many people, have done a request to my local police force, the Metropolitan Police, I want to know, do I have a record of non-crime hate incidents that you've not even told me about? They are now how many weeks? I think 4 weeks now overdue with the legally required response time.
Wow.
I mean, they're supposed to reply.
Yes,
I thought Christmas, I'll leave it. Every week I say hello, and they go, we've been inundated with requests. Well, maybe that tells you something. Yeah, exactly. But this idea that two-tier policing, people saying there's two-tier policing is extremism. Well, we've had a former Home Secretary, got current Shadow Justice Secretary, so Suella Braverman and Robert Jennery, got Nigel Farage, leader of Reform. We've got many other people saying, there's two-tier policing, two-tier justice. I believe there absolutely is. I think it's blatant and obvious to see. I don't know how anyone could possibly look at the facts and not see this, but that apparently is evidence of extremism, far-right extremism.
Well, then I'll be arrested because I think there is two-tier policing.
Prison's going to be a hoot. It's going to be all the best people.
Well, it is. It's going to be a little social group for us all. But it just. What happens to free speech in all of this? That goes out of the window, which is what the Labour government wants. But also, you can't hold an opinion now that goes against what the government believes because they're going to create a crime around it, so therefore they're just going to arrest us. Well, we don't have enough police, we don't have enough prison space. What are they going to do with the actual criminals that they're not arresting?
Well, they're going to let them out early because they need to get someone in who's written a hurty tweet. I mean, it's genuinely mad, isn't it? Yeah. What do you make of the Children's Commissioner, Rachel de Souza? She has done a big report into the Southport rioters who were underage. And her view is that, look, most of them, and she spoke to a huge number of them who got charged and some went to prison, basically, for throwing a stone and things. And the vast majority of them were not motivated by extremism. They went out on the streets. They don't have the police. They feel that, the police are the enemy, as a lot of people do. And hey, when people like me feel the police are the enemy, there's a bit of a problem, right? And they went on the streets and they basically, got caught up in what felt like a bit of fun at the time. And we know that's what happened, in the 2011 riots in London. And they weren't necessarily bad people. She said they'd never had a criminal record, a lot of them, and then they get caught up and they've gone to prison. And she says their records should be wiped. What do you think about that? I'm in two minds.
I was going to say, I really am in two minds.
You still made the wrong choices.
They did. They went out there and they knew what they were doing was wrong. If my child had done that, I would have come down on him like a ton of bricks. I don't need the police to do it for me. I'm quite capable of doing it myself. So what happened?
In fact, my
parents?
child would be running to the police. Save me,
Yes,
save me.
yeah. Safety and sanctuary in a police station away from me. So I'm in two minds, because yes, they've made the wrong decision, but also they're kids without any kind of record whatsoever.
Yeah.
Why do you want it sort of 13, 14?
But I mean, you do get your
that.
record. I mean, I think that, again, some of them is long enough that it won't be expunged. I think there really is an element, unless someone has committed sexual assault or robberies. I do think at 18 you should be allowed to start again. I do for that. But, again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well from you. Let's also talk about amazing stats that have come in about 45 minutes ago. This is the latest Office for National Statistics stats on UK population projections. Now, let's bear in mind, they've always been wrong. And they've always been wrong in only one direction. They massively, massively underestimate the number of people who are going to be living in Britain at any one time. Bear in mind also, we've got like 1 million people, lowest estimate realistically, of illegal migrants living in this country. Bearing in mind that when European Union citizens were asked, could you want to sign up and after Brexit, and they thought that we had, I think, 3.5 million. Turns out we had 5.5 million. We didn't even know, and they were here legally, right? So just bear in mind, let this stat sink in. The UK population, according to the official figures, which always underestimate, is projected to reach 72.5 million by 2032. 2032 is 7 years away. It is really not far. That is up 5 million from where we were 2 and a bit years ago. 5 million. So in 10 years, from 2022 to 2032, it's predicted to go up by 5 million people. That is almost 5 Birminghams. It'll end up being probably 8 Birminghams, because the projections are always wrong. And you can see even the projections from last year, they were predicting only 1 million more than that by 2036, so 4 years later. Basically, they're working on the basis there will be an average of 340,000 more people coming to the country every year than leaving the country. It's almost, by the way, that 5 million, almost entirely migration, because basically birth rate, death rate, going to be pretty much the same for the next few years, because we've got an ageing population, but we have a lot of the baby boomer generation, and there'll be more people dying, people are having fewer kids, blah, blah, blah. Basically, 5 million more people are going to come to this country. That's a conservative estimate. It will be wrong, it'll be more than that, and they're going to make their homes here. Where are they going to live? Where are we going to get the school places from, and the teachers, the nurses, the doctors? Where are they going to park their cars? Where are they going to find a place on a bus? What about the water supply for those extra 5 million people? Electricity supply, the gas supply, the sewage supply. Where is that coming from? Because I don't see anyone making any plans for that.
No, none whatsoever. And it makes the country larger than France for the first time ever. And if you look at France on a map and you look at the UK on a map,
France's territory, France's geography, I think, is 2.4 times bigger than the Britain.
Yeah, they are projected.
The British land.
Their projection is 70 million by 2032.
So we're going to have roughly the same population, but we're going to be in a much smaller country.
Absolutely, and you only have to look at them side by side, and you just think, how does that work? And it plainly
also,
it doesn't.
Better skiing and beaches. I'm just saying.
Do you want to swap? Do you want to head to France?
I'm just saying. Got to invade anywhere.
Enormous. Nobody's got a plan for it.
Nope.
Nobody has for at least the last 20 years.
We might build a 3rd runway at Heathrow. That'll help people arriving. I mean, genuinely, there is no plan. Your lot, just as bad.
I know
just as bad.
I know.
This lot, even how can they be worse than your lot? And yet they I mean, let's have a round of applause. But genuinely, it's the fact that these stats they're like, just casually put out, these are just official stats.
Yeah.
And the fact that people are going, where are these people going to live? Rents, house prices go up all the time. You can't get a decent place at a school. Overcrowded classrooms. You can't get 7.5 million people on waiting list at NHS. Another 5 million people turning up. Not a problem.
It's all right. Angela Rayner's going to build loads of houses.
Brilliant.
Ed Miliband's going to put windmills up. It's all fine. You know that.
It is genuinely insanity. What we're told is that we need people to do those jobs. Yeah, but those people also need services. Yeah, because they're all engineers, aren't they? They're all biophysicists. I mean, give me a break. Can we just talk about one other thing? I'm off on one today. I really, because I can't believe I live... This country is full of so many brilliant people. We have been responsible for the industrial... I mean, not me personally, I'm useless at any of this stuff, but we're responsible for the Industrial Revolution, for so much of like spreading democracy around the world. Yeah, colonialism, yeah, you know, you're welcome. You know, but we have done so many amazing things, you know, fighting the Nazis, freeing Europe, so much about, you know, human rights, so much about, you know, pushing so many important things. We have, you know, the most amazing cultural history, everything we've done. So many clever people. We are at the forefront in terms of technical innovation and medical innovation in this country. We really are. And then they go off and make money in America, but a lot of it starts here. And we can't work out that if you have 5 million more people, you might need more homes and schools and more infrastructure, a new reservoir, a new nuclear power station, a gas power station. We can't... The people in charge, the people with firsts from Oxford and Cambridge, those people, they can't work this stuff out. That terrifies me.
It isn't going to get any better either, because they don't see what they're doing has the
okay, you know what they're doing right
having.
now? I mean, not that they're sensible enough to be listening to me, because they're listening to someone reading a book on Radio 4. That's what they're doing. But genuinely, they're thinking, I'm a right-wing bigot for saying everything I've said.
Yeah, they're arranging.
That's what they think. They think anyone pointing out literal facts is a bigot.
Don't you know they're arranging for the police to meet you after
Non-crime hate incident.
Exactly, and get you off the streets.
My kettle is... I make terrible tea, but I make really southern weak tea, but my kettle is on at any time.
Come round for a
By
nice
the way,
comfy chat.
very interesting, exciting development in my bag there from 1st of June last year. What's the date? Oh, 28th of January. Oh, CPS has now requested a victim impact statement. Someone who didn't own my bag has my bag. I'm really peed off about it. Yeah. I want that person to go to prison. There's your victim impact statement. January, they've asked for a victim impact statement.
They won't deal with it until June. It'll sit on somebody's desk.
I bother them. I bother the poor, lovely lady who's a police. I bother her every single week. You can just imagine. Oh, I've got another email from Julia. Not letting it go, folks. You may as well get on and prosecute. I'm serious. Deep side. I just want to talk about one other thing. We're going to get to, by the way, we're going to talk about that Chinese AI chatbot. Mainly because I want someone to explain to me what AI is, what chatbot is. We're going to we're going to go full on Janet and John, primary school level. Of course, the primary school kids understand this stuff, don't they? We're going to talk about Trump banning trans troops. I do just want to talk, though, about the US border czar, Trump's US border czar, responding to the mad video put out by the Hollywood actress Selena Gomez. I've no idea what she's been in. She's like one of the most famous women on the planet. I wouldn't recognise her if she walked in now. But she's crying. Just this beautiful video over mass deportation starting. Trump said he was going to do it. He was voted in. He's got the mandate, and now he's doing it. Yeah. The deportations so far of criminal illegal migrants, no right to be in the States and have committed crimes in the States. Those people are being deported. She puts out a video crying. Turns out, didn't go down quite as well as she thought it would. But the border czar basically went, take it up with Congress.
Exactly. You want to change it, get elected and make the changes yourself. And this is what happens. They're happy to cry on camera, look ridiculous, sound ridiculous. Fans don't like it. They delete it very quickly.
Also, love, you know when you live in your beautiful Hollywood home with your security guards and you have your limo everywhere and you don't have to deal with criminal foreign migrants. Live a normal life like most people do and then have an opinion. Listen, we're not going to get to all the stories we've got to get to today. We're not going to get to all the brilliant calls that I can see on the board right now. Let's get to a break. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000, particularly about this leaked Home Office review. You want to talk about the population projections. You want to talk about anything we've got to talk about today. Get in touch. Love to get you on air. This is Talk. We are the home of quite angry common sense today.
We need to start sending back illegal immigrants, criminals back to where they came from with lifetime bans. And if people don't like it, there are tools and measures that we can use, like stopping aid, stopping visas. We should do the same thing. And sometimes genius is just doing basic things that actually somebody has to step up and do them. And I'm really hoping that Kemi, new Conservative Party under new ownership, this is the sort of stuff that Kemi's absolutely got to grab. We have got to do things differently.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Claire Pearsall still with me, former Conservative Government Advisor. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. I'm really cross today. You might have noticed. Because we're all basically extremists and far right because we think there's two-tier policing. We should all be facing non-crime hate incidents, and apparently we need to be worrying about incels and young lads sitting in their bedrooms rather than worrying about Islamist extremism, because even though Islamist extremism is responsible for 80-90% of the deaths and the attacks in this country. I mean, facts apparently. Meanwhile, we're going to add 5 million people minimum to the population in the next 5 years. I mean, 7 years. What could possibly go wrong, people? What could possibly go wrong? 10:26 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Claire is in the Wirral and wants to talk about this Home Office report that's been leaked. Claire, what do you make of it?
Morning, Julia. Good to talk to you. Well, I'm like you. I'm losing the plot, to be honest. Totally. I'm sure you're not, because you're a very sensible lady.
I'm not feeling sensible. I'm just feeling beeped off.
Exactly. And, I don't believe anything that is said to us anymore, I'm
That's
afraid.
The thing.
And it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's not.
No, we've been lied to so many times.
So many times, but we're dealing with an extremist establishment. And, we're all talking about right-wing extremism. There isn't much in this country, but unfortunately we've got a government who are extremists. Yep. We've got an establishment, judiciary, police. They are not only left-wing, they're far left-wing, which is very, very frightening.
I think you are completely, genuinely, I think you are completely right on this. We're always told that our views are the mainstream views for a start. But also, we're talking about our government. Our Prime Minister is a man who spent 3-4 years when he was Chatham Brexit Secretary, trying to overturn a democratic vote and stop it from happening and being enacted. That's extremist last time I looked.
Exactly, and I just think that the way that things are going, things that are fed to us as we're talking about the numbers of people coming in. Yeah. You know what? If we have this many migrants, why is our birth rate down? There are actually couples who are still living with their parents.
Yep. With their kids.
They can't find a house. They haven't got the money for mortgages. They can't find social housing. They're filling it all up with migrants and giving them to migrants. People are on the housing list. What do you do if you've got to both go out and work, to make a living? You actually have to put off having children.
And that's all we know. That's what they're doing. That is, I know so many couples in their 30s. I keep saying to them, I'm an evangelist on this. For goodness sake, your best fertile years are, I've got one child because I started too late. Get going now. And they're like, we can't, we're still renting. We can't afford to buy. Can't afford to get married. Can't afford, and, we're paying debts from university. And they are struggling. But the solution is apparently bring another 5 million people in.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think, there's always these sort of platitudes that they come out with. Yeah. But all of our problems, Julia, and you know it, and everybody that watches your show knows it and watches Talk knows it, that all of our problems are being caused by migration, and unfortunately...
No, I don't know. I don't think they are. They're being caused by poor government that allows people to come to this country who aren't net contributors, which unfortunately is the vast majority of people. Even if they're working themselves, they're not necessarily net contributors overall because of the services they use. I don't blame individual legal migrants who want to work and make a good life for their families. I don't blame them at all. I don't think they are the problem. There are people in charge who didn't ask us, who when they did ask us did the exact opposite, and who have lied to us and called us far right and bigoted for pointing out facts like the net benefit to the country and the rest of the population. I blame them and only them.
Yeah, but I do think that if we have a Home Office, and it happened in the last government, with the last government, because they weren't really conservative. No. They're left leaning. Yeah. And, if they have the Home Office actually advertising, it's so pathetic that they think that they can tell us that we're, far right and all that.
I know, exactly. But Yvette Cooper says, she's rejected this review. Yeah, but we still paid for it, and you still chose those people to carry it out, which tells us everything. Claire, I really appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew's on the line. He's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew.
Good morning. Cracker check of a show. Well done there. We all want legal contributing migration. What we don't want is illegal migration. In relation to that report, that has made me apoplectic with rage. I mean, I'm coming off the walls here. It's ridiculous. So what you're saying there is that people's conversation... you could say to me, that jacket, Andrew, doesn't really suit you. That colour washes you out. So that becomes a hate crime.
Well, no, it would have to be someone perceiving that to be motivated by a particular characteristic of you. I mean, it's not that glib, but it's in that territory.
Well, you don't know until it's been tested in the courts. And then you look at Trump and what he's done in America. He's just gone into the same types of people and just ended them. And that's where Starmer has to act like
he's not going to do that. He thinks there are some women who've got penises, for goodness sake. He's insane.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that the people that most suffer always are women and children from the inaction of the Labour Party? And going forward, the funniest thing, if we can get anything from this on the upside, is this is yet another paragraph for the for reform for the next election. It's easy being reform at the moment.
Oh, absolutely.
In their manifesto.
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you very much, Dee, for that. Quick response from Claire Pearsall.
Yeah, I think Andrew was spot on there that this is easy for reform now. It hands it over to them. They need to now capitalise that if they want to be in government in 4 years' time.
Looks like they are in the polls, that's for sure. It's a steep road to climb and you have to get over a certain hump in first past the post, but they're looking like they're going to do it. Going to take a quick break right now. Then we're going to be talking to Andrew Gilligan. He's a senior fellow at Policy Exchange think tank. He's the co-author of this report, basically exposing this leaked Home Office dossier that, everyone say they want nothing to do with right now, but it was what the Home Office ordered, and basically if we didn't have it leaked, maybe that would actually be official government policy. It probably already is. We'll talk to Andrew Gilligan up next. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss that. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor, tries to hide that bit. I mention it every time. Is in the studio still with me. Taken some great calls, lots more great calls on the board about this leaked Home Office review, claiming that two-tier policing is an extreme white narrative, and urging police to record more, not fewer, non-crime hate incidents. Yvette Cooper's like, no, it's nothing to do with me. No, I'm rejecting all of this. Really? Because it seems to me that's exactly what you think. Also, again, we've had this again and again. We should be concentrating on all those non-Islamist terrorists, because they're the real threat. Except statistically, they really aren't, are they? But I'm just waiting to find out. We are trying to speak to Andrew Gilligan, who is the author or co-author of the Policy Exchange report, and we're hoping to speak to him. We're having a few technical problems, but in the meantime, I just want to bring you some breaking news about. So now you'll remember this story, this awful story of a collision at a school in Wimbledon, the study prep school in South West London. This happened back on 6th of July 2023, and the driver, a woman driving an SUV, basically just crashed into the school while they were having basically a sort of a summer tea party at the end of term, and it killed two little schoolgirls. I mean, thankfully it wasn't more children who died. It was absolutely awful. And it was a gold Land Rover, smashed through the fence, drove into the school, and more than a dozen other people were injured. Now, the 48-year-old woman who was driving that car, she did not face further action from the Crown Prosecution Service. They decided that there weren't any reasons to think that it was actually a criminal act. It was just a horrific, tragic accident. It's just been revealed by the Metropolitan Police that a 48-year-old woman has been arrested for a second time. She's been arrested this morning on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. They've reopened that investigation. There was a big demand, wasn't there, from Claire Pearsall on parents to say, look, this is clearly not right.
It didn't feel right at the time, and we understand that accidents happen. However, there always looks like there was more to it, and it felt very quick to close the case off as quickly as they did.
Yeah, it is.
I don't understand. But obviously they have now got more evidence to rearrest somebody.
To rearrest. But again, no charges been brought as yet, and obviously, but I just wanted to get you up to date with that. So we're having a few problems trying to reach, very frustrating, the co-author of this report that basically found this leaked Home Office dossier of basically how we should be dealing with extremism and the violence threats in this country, Andrew Gilligan. But I'm very delighted to say that Harry Miller joins us now. He's from Fair Cop. He's a former police officer who, by the way, of course, went all the way, I think it was to the Supreme Court, wasn't it, Harry, over your non-crime hate incident. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the Supreme Court because the College of Policing backed down.
That was it, yeah. But you took all the way. We're very proud of you. We're very proud of you. Now, look, let's just go back into the details of this dossier. We wouldn't know about it if it hadn't been leaked and Policy Exchange think tank had got hold of it. But the number of things that it suggests. One is that police should record more non-crime hate incidents, not fewer. It also says that, I mean, I just do think quite extraordinary, that two-tier policing claims, so people saying, look, you know, there's different ways of policing different, should we say, communities is the euphemism in this country, or an extreme right-wing narrative, according to this internal review. It recommends sweeping changes to our approach to combating extremism. It says that right-wing extremists frequently exploit the grooming gang scandal, which astonishingly it refers to as the alleged group-based sexual abuse, to promote anti-Muslim sentiment. I don't know what's alleged about it. I mean, we all know it's been happening. But it also said our approach to tackling extremism shouldn't be based on specific ideologies like Islamism or far right, but it should look at behaviours and activity of concern, because there's a massive range of beliefs and ideologies. And this ties into, of course, this was post the Southport attack by Axel Rudikabana and the Southport riots, but it basically was saying, you know, this man didn't fit into a particular ideology, so you need to widen it. Harry, what do you make of it all?
Well, the first thing about non-crime hate incidents is this: they serve no useful purpose whatsoever. They haven't prevented a single crime, and that's not me speculating. This is a result of FOIs to every single police.
Freedom of information requests.
Said, you know, how successful they've been, and they came back and said, we don't know, we don't do any analysis. We see non-crime hate and crime as separate and distinct. We also contacted the College of Policing and asked them what empirical or academic research they'd done as to the effectiveness of non-crime hate incidents, and of course the answer came back they hadn't done
and they were the body that had advised the policing college that, you know, College of Police, that there's this theory, isn't it, that you have these non-crime hate incidents, then you basically tackle it at the source, and then you don't end up with extreme violence, and there's just simply no evidence for this.
No evidence whatsoever. It's all based on a 1953 work by a fellow called Gordon Allport.
Yeah, let's not go into all the details, but it's a theory.
What I'm saying is there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever. Now, what the police have found and the government have found is that they serve as a handy way around the criminal justice system. That you are able, with a non-crime hate instance, which by the way requires no evidence whatsoever, all it's down to is somebody's perception, they are able to mark you out as the wrong sort. They are able to stamp your head that says wrong'un on it, and then they are able, as a result of that, then keep eyes on you, because the theory goes that you are a potential terrorist. Now, this morning, Fair Cop tweeted out a whole list of things that can get you on the terrorist these days, saying that 100% of women do not have a penis is one of them. That Tommy Robinson might just occasionally have a point, to link Pakistani grooming gangs, to link grooming gangs with Pakistanis. All of these things are likely to get you not only into trouble with the police, but are likely to cause there to be a knock on the door from Prevent. Let's not forget, it's only a few months ago that Prevent turned up at a house because the person in the house had what they thought was a Anglo-Saxon helmet. And to the police and Prevent, an Anglo-Saxon helmet is evidence of you being a right-wing extremist. And therefore they knock at your door and they have eyes on you.
But also, I mean, even leaving aside the non-crime hate incident side of things, and again, they are very serious. They can prevent people from getting jobs in the future. And again, this is thought police stuff anyway, and very unfair. And again, police aren't investigating enough crimes, so could they maybe focus on actual crimes, not non-crimes, would seem to be the view of the vast majority of the public. But in terms of like what they are saying in terms of, you know, what potential extreme violent or terrorist perpetrators we should look at, that actually, you know, we shouldn't focus on ideology, you know, Islamism or far right. I mean, we had an issue with, you know, incels. You know, we know that far right extremism has been a big cause of violence in America. There has been a source of violence in the UK. We know, you know, we've had the awful killing of Joe Cox. We've had the Finsbury Park mosque attacks, but the vast majority, 80-90% of all attacks in this country are carried out by people motivated by Islamist ideology. 80-90% of the deaths from attacks in this country are carried out by people motivated by Islamist ideology. But they're saying, no, we should look at lots of other things as well. But that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's political expediency. Unfortunately, repeated governments have not wanted to cause offence to large constituents of Muslims. And as a result of that, if you can't name the problem, you can't solve the problem. And that's why we're very happy to talk about Pakistani grooming gangs attacking white working class women. And by the way, it's not only white working class women. There's a report in the Telegraph this weekend about how young Sikh women are also unfortunately, the unfortunate victims of these Pakistani grooming gangs. So it's not simply a white thing. It's a willing blindness, a politically expedient myopia towards offending the Muslim community. And the way they do this is by they are forever chasing this mythical right wing. Now, of course, there is right wing terrorism, but do we ever hear about the alt left? Do we ever hear alt left wing, extreme left wing terrorist? You can declare yourself an extreme left winger with total impunity.
Oh, you can march on the streets and the police will protect your rights to do so.
Absolutely.
But again, this is the bizarre thing. And again, what is now regarded as extreme right wing is actually largely most people's views, and also it's largely fact-based as well. And again, we're into this territory where you've got people working in the Home Office and at the highest levels of the police who are totally out of touch with normal British opinion.
That's right. And of course, what they're doing is they're erasing language like they did in 1984's Newspeak. So you can't talk about grooming gangs within the same sentence as Pakistani men because it's forbidden. It is, to use the language of 1984, is double on good.
Yeah.
And we cannot be having this because if we cannot describe our situation, we cannot get the police's attention to solve it. And so we are left absolutely adrift from the criminal justice system because they have robbed us of our language to describe what's happening to us. And this is an absolute scandal and it's a crime. The police have become language police. They have become criminals going through the dictionary and purging it of everything that could hold them to account.
But we know that so many in the political world, and not just in Labour, the Tories have been pretty bad about this as well. Certainly the Lib Dems, the Greens, are totally signed up to all this stuff, where their first reaction to anything, the murder of David Amos, the Tory MP, by an Islamist extremist. What happened in Southport, Axel Rudabakana's horrific, would have been a massacre of 26 girls if he'd had his way, rather than the awful death of 3 and 8 other girls horribly injured. Their first reaction is, oh, we need to do something about the internet and social media and hurty words and hate speech. Never about, we need to actually stop madmen killing people.
Yeah, and not only that, but Keir Starmer's first reaction was to say, "Oh, the Pakistani community are really hurting right now."
Oh.
Well, what about the white community?
Well, my thing is there isn't a Pakistani community. There isn't a white community. What
I agree. Well, that was
just
Keir
people.
Starmer's first. That was what Keir Starmer was focused on, this mythical, hurt and grieving Pakistani community. No care at all for those who are worried sick about their own children, whether they be Sikh children, whether they be white children, or just non-Muslim children. There is no care at all for that, because the second that you express a concern for that community, for your own community, for communities which are non-favoured, non-Islamic, then you are immediately seen as extreme right.
And again, for me, it's the fact that we spend all this time dividing people into their religions that as an atheist, I just find it utterly bewildering. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in people's religions or their ethnicity. I think it's totally, I'm interested in what people say and what they do. It's the only thing that interests me.
Well, I'm an evangelical Christian, and I don't give a monkey's if you want to take the absolute, rip a new one into me. If you want to criticise Christianity, you can do it. You can do it every day and twice on a Sunday if you want to, because I don't expect my religion and my set of beliefs to be protected.
But that has been a key fact, hasn't it? Harry, we're going to have to leave it there. I so appreciate you joining us this morning. Harry Miller from Fair Cop, former police officer as well, on that Home Office dossier. Claire Pierce, there are a lot of people who are very angry, and understandably so, about this and what is going on at the Home Office. But this dossier, this leaked dossier, it just does really reveal just like, a rottenness at the core of the Home Office, doesn't it?
It really does. And I think people are going to not believe a word that comes out of the Home Secretary's mouth from this point onwards.
Did we anyway? I've interviewed Yvette Cooper in the past. Let's be honest, Yvette Cooper doesn't actually believe in borders. Yvette Cooper's never been able to give me a number on how many migrants would you want in the country. We're going to be talking more about the migrant numbers just a few moments after that extraordinary report from the ONS that's predicted, but that in just 7 years' time we're going to have a whopping great extra 5 million people in the country, almost entirely migrant arrivals. Well, I don't remember agreeing to that. Did you? We'll talk about that with Stephen Wolfe. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
sadly increasing irrelevance, not just of our wonderful country on the world stage, but of Western Europe in general, the French as well, the Germans, the Spanish, the Italians are starting to do a bit of a comeback that maybe we could all follow. But that is very upsetting. And maybe Trump has decided, as you say, let's be nice to Starmer, kill him with a bit of kindness, to try and encourage Starmer to change course on the many, many areas in which he's gone completely wrong. And let's remember that Trump is himself half British. His mother was born in Scotland. Yeah. He loves the United Kingdom more than any president ever has.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Do welcome your calls 0344 499 1000 about everything we're talking today. I've got a funny feeling you might have a few opinions on this. The latest figures from the Office for National Statistics, which shows the UK population is projected to reach 72.5 million people by mid-2032. So, in just 7 years' time, we will see our population go up by what will effectively be over a 10-year period. If you go back from 2022 to 2032, it's going to go up by 5 million. That's the projection from the Office of National Statistics. That's almost 5 Birminghams, but it's actually more than 5 Birminghams because, by the way, all of their projections have always been wrong and always in the wrong direction, far, far lower than they actually are. Let's talk about this with Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Good morning to you, Stephen.
Good morning, Julia.
I imagine you're not remotely surprised by this. Another report, another population prediction, huge numbers, but it'll still be wrong because it'll be an underestimate.
Julia, I'm going to tell you right now that I think not only is the national statistics wrong, they're vastly wrong. We've been looking at figures over the last couple of years, have we not, of 1 million people net migration last year. The year before that, 900,000, and the year before that, several hundred thousand, way over the 500,000 limits that we've got. These figures that they're basing them on is 340,000 net migration, a third of what we can get in the last 3 years. I've just run through the figures today, just before I came onto the show, with the government's own site, which they have, the population of half that, 550,000 people coming in as net migration. If we look at that, the population will be 80 million, 8.5 million people more.
By 2032?
That's more rational, yes. Average 500,000 net migration a year will lead us to those figures of 80 million people. And not only that, Julia, I've looked at the statistics that they're using for children being born per women. Yeah. They've actually reduced that from 1.55 to 1.4. So they're underestimating the number of births that are coming here as well.
Yeah, I mean, we know that migrants are more likely to have more children than homeborn women in this country. We've got an ageing population. We've got the baby boomers, who there's a big cohort and more people are going to be dying. But that means we're also going to have births. They're going to be roughly equal, aren't they? So virtually the entire extra pretend level of 5 million people is going to be new arrivals to this country. Are you aware of anything being done by the government, by any authority whatsoever, to plan for where 5 million more people would live, where their children would go to school, where they would seek medical treatment, where they might park their cars, where they might get their bum on a seat on a bus to work in the morning, where their water supply will come from, their electricity supply, the gas supply for heating their homes? Is there, where they might buy their food and things? Is there any evidence of anything being done to cater to the extra 5 million people, or are we just going to share out a bit more what we've already got?
I think there is deep concern within the Treasury about where this is coming from, because they recognise, as we've seen recently, figures coming out saying that more migrants that come in from abroad are actually staying on benefits and costing us more in housing. No.
People who've been pointing that out for the last few years are just far-right extremists and bigots, Stephen. Do you get that? Did you not get that memo?
Yes, I did, sadly. So therefore, I am a fully fledged far-right bigot who chases the evidence. The evidence is statistics and numbers. And if they don't like that, then that's tough. But what I will say is that the only entity that I've noticed, Julia, is Ofwat. And Ofwat have been basing their pricing for the companies and how much water we have on 65 million population. In a recent meeting, I raised this and I said, look, population's going to be 10 million more. What is the impact? And they said probably somewhere between 50 to 100% increases in water prices and a hell of a lot more infrastructure needed to be built. So there are entities looking at this, but the cost to Britain of this massive population explosion caused solely, as you've rightly pointed out, by immigration is a vast amount of taxes being taken from us. We will become the 21st most populated country in the world. And if you just take England out, Julia, we will be the 24th, just England alone, the 24th most populated country in the world.
And that's when you look at countries like Singapore, which are just basically just one big city to all intents and purposes. But there's not just an economic side to this. There's not just an infrastructure side to this, a housing pressure side to this. And yeah, hey, I'm supporting the government in building more houses. They're not going to build even the number of houses they want to build. And that number of houses doesn't touch the size of the number we need already, let alone with another, God knows how many million people. But there's also a cultural side to this. And Kemi Badenoch's been talking about this. This is something Nigel Farage has been talking about for a very long time. But, obviously you're shouted down by Labour if you mention this issue, which is the cultural side of this, the integration, community cohesion, people being able to sort of chat at the bus stop, at the school gates, people sharing the same values, wanting the same sort of things in their country. That goes by the wayside if you have so many people arriving in such a short period of time and often moving to live in communities which are basically living, parallel lives side by side with the homegrown community.
Oh, absolutely. And I've just been running again through the figures on that, Julia, because I think the cultural aspects are going to grow even more enormously. If I take just the ONS figures as they've published today, not my extracted figures, then you're looking at a population of white English of only being 70% of the population. And the Asian community, the Southeast Asian, and those adding Iran, Iraq, and Syria into that, will become 13 to 14% of the population. And I think what you'll see with that is the increased tensions around what is Britain, what is our cultural heritage. We will see more statues being pulled down. We will see more images of Winston Churchill being removed from public office.
It's the white Britons who are doing that.
They are, but that's a small cultural group of white Britons who really can't understand, like we see with Nick Clegg and that type of individual, who really don't understand what's happening in their country around their nice, exclusive little bubble group that they have. Yeah. And so with them, it's ignoring them because they go off and travel the world. They go and see different people everywhere. It doesn't really impact them.
And they're living in enclaves. But again, you're talking about like women's safety. I was fascinating. I was talking to some young women in their 20s and teenagers recently, and asking about being harassed on the street, and they all said, quite uncomfortably, didn't feel comfortable saying it, that actually the vast amount of the harassment of young women they're feeling on their experience on the streets is from men with foreign accents, men who are not born in this country. That has an impact, impact on gay men. We've seen the impact on Jewish citizens in this country in terms of those who are threatening violence against Jews and the hatred against Jews in this country. There's all this stuff that's going on and everyone looks a bit uncomfortable when you talk about it, but it's a reality. I'm very pleased that you are someone who has been talking about this stuff, and I so appreciate you joining us today. Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. I'm going to get Claire Pistol's thoughts on that in just a few moments. We're going to go to a break. We're going to get an update on the news, and I want to hear more from you, not just about the population predictions, because I'm with Stephen. These population predictions are huge, but they don't even touch the sides of the reality. I want to talk also about that leaked Home Office review claiming two-tier policing is an extreme right-wing narrative, urging police to carry out more non-crime hate incident recordings. I would love to hear your reaction to that. 0344 499 1000. I've had to do it, so you have to do it as well. Keep it clean so we can stay on air. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. It's 3 minutes past 11. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you are watching on YouTube or on your connected device, listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, thank you so much for your company. We have, as I said earlier, a rip-roaring show for you. If you've just tuned in, you've missed a great hour, but we are with you live all the way until 1. Coming up in this hour, I'm going to talk far more about this leaked Home Office review, claiming that two-tier policing is an extreme right-wing narrative. Yes, of course it is. It's just totally made up in our heads. It claims that right-wing extremists frequently exploit the grooming gang scandal, which is described outrageously as an alleged group-based sexual abuse. Just alleged. Didn't actually happen, just alleged, to promote anti-Muslim sentiment. Yeah, it's all just made up. It's all just made up, isn't it? The review also urges police to record more, not fewer, non-crime hate incidents to combat violent extremism, even though there's no evidence whatsoever that it does actually combat violent extremism. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who ordered the review last summer in the wake of the Southport riots and after Axel Ruda-Cabana's awful killing spree, she rejected, we now know, the report's recommendations. But why did she choose these people to write that review when this is what they were going to come up with? Doesn't that tell you about the rot that is at the heart of the Home Office and the, frankly, I can't decide whether they are mad or bad. These idiots, these people who are so wrong about everything, are basically in charge of Home Office policy, advising the Home Secretary. I don't even think she'd have rejected any of this if it wasn't for the political backlash she knows she would get. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What is your reaction? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls to charge at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking more about Donald Trump today. He's expected to step up his war on woke with a ban on all DEI programmes, that's diversity, equity and inclusion programmes, in the US military. He's going to sign another executive order. It also looks likely that trans-identified men, let's call them what they are, men, will be banned from competing in all women's sports in the next Olympics. It's not transphobia, it's just because they're men and it's women's sport. I don't think this is complicated. Never used to be complicated. Also, we're going to be talking about this massive AI story as the US tech giant Nvidia lost over 1/6 of its value on the stock market after Chinese AI app DeepSeek. Who comes up with the names for these things? I mean, definitely teenage boys. DeepSeek was launched at just a fraction of the cost of US giants like OpenAI and ChatGPT. We're going to be talking to a tech expert who's going to explain this to me. You can join in as well. Basically, it's going to be a Janet and John explanation. So I hope that will benefit us all and we can all be very knowledgeable at the end. Anyway, we're going to be talking about all of that. This is the home of common sense. Lots of common sense from Claire Pearsall, my guest for today, former Conservative government advisor, and rather conveniently, someone who worked in the Home Office for years with the Conservatives. I mean, we are in mad territory, Claire, where we have a horrific murder, a murder spree from Axel Ruda-Cabana. The details last Thursday were just beyond horror for anybody, let alone, you know, those poor families who suffered it. And then we had the riots post Southport in August, and then we had the crackdown, massive big debates about policing, justice system, thought police, extremism, you name it. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper orders this review last year of like, how do we tackle violence, extremism? Virtually every single thing that they've come up with in this review, which we only know about because it was leaked and the think tank Policy Exchange got hold of it and have written a report on it. The only reason we know, otherwise we wouldn't know about it. The advisors she asked to do this report, basically, I can't think of anything they've got more wrong. There should be more, not fewer, non-crime hate incidents. That we should be looking at anyone claiming there's two-tier justice as being an extremist, that we need to be worrying about, you know, the loners and things. Yeah, we do need to worry about the loners, but not focused on any extremist ideology, whether it's far right or whether it's Islamist, even though the vast majority of incidents that lead to death and terror in this country are Islamist ideology. The next one is you got your far right. But unless we've got the lone wolves and we've got the people who are just incels or whatever, we've got all those people. But shouldn't we be focusing most of our resources on the people carrying out most of the crimes?
We absolutely should. And I think the Labour government are so upset that this is not proving what they want it to prove.
Yeah.
They want to move it away from Islamist extremism, and they want to put it onto the far right and paint them as the bogeyman for absolutely every crime going.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work like that. And I think the danger that you come across is the security services need to be looking at Islamist extremism, considering that that is the majority of the crime, where the majority of the people are killed. So if you're not going to look at that, then dangerous, bad people are going to get away with this.
Yeah.
It's quite simple.
Oh,
and if
which
they
we
can't
saw.
see that, yeah, we did.
Because Axel Commander didn't fit. He was preferred to prevent 3 times,
Yeah.
but he didn't fit in a particular category. And we didn't think it was a terror incident, even though he had now killed Manuel, because he was obsessed with other things as well. But interestingly, and this was something we spoke to a journalist about last Thursday before the actual sentencing hearing began for Axel Commander. One of the key things he'd been looking at and repeatedly said to schoolmates was his obsession with a white genocide.
Yeah.
How Britain needed a white genocide, like Rwanda had a genocide. I mean, if he'd been a white 17-year-old talking about a black genocide in the UK, he'd have come under prevent. They would have been taking action. They would have dealt with it. But he was a black teenager talking about white genocide. Oh, it doesn't really fit a category. So we're just going to let him just carry on.
Exactly. Nobody thought that what he was doing was violent and it was dangerous and it was cause for concern because he didn't fit
carrying
into
a knife
box.
repeatedly.
Yeah, he didn't fit into a box. So they said, "Oh, it's not really our problem." Well, whose problem is he?
Isn't it a bit of a problem?
There's
There's a whole talk about like, well, you can't expand the terrorism definition too much because then prevent will be overwhelmed at basically every criminal. But it's the inability of these people to expand and, clearly this guy was a threat. I mean, does it have to be terrorism? Okay, if he didn't fit into that category, could someone else take it over? I mean, I think most of us just no longer trust our authorities to deal with this stuff. The people fall through the cracks again and again, whether it is children being beaten by their so-called carers, their parents, and everyone knowing the parents are at risk and not doing anything about it. Children getting in with the gangs and no one doing it. Children being gang raped and people going and police going, oh well, they're young prostitutes. Yeah. No such thing. No. There is no. It's literally in our law. It's not possible to be a legal underage prostitute. You are a victim of rape. Full stop. That's it. Yeah. And it is just extraordinary how these aren't one-offs. It's again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And they're not even catching the Islamist extremists. Now, we need to give praise to those police officers and those undercover agents, security people who are working around the clock, doing horrible, difficult work. And they are saving us from other attacks that we never hear about.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I don't want to undermine that amazing work. But too many are getting through. And I think it's the PC attitudes and the box ticking that is part of the problem.
It is, and Keir Starmer wanting to change the definition of terrorism.
It's all words.
What?
It's all about words, isn't it? It's never about action.
Yeah, he just wants there to be a nice description, a dictionary entry that you can look at, but it isn't like that.
But your lot, when you worked for the Tories in government, they said a lot of the right things, but they still didn't do anything.
Inaction, again, costs lives, and that is one of the most appalling parts of any government, and including my own, and I will hold my hands up to that, having worked there. You need to be able to push for action, and it doesn't happen.
And then we talk about civil liberties. Well, you can't go rounding everybody up. Well, you're quite happy to round everyone up post Southport when people wrote hurting Facebook posts, some of which were absolutely vile, but nevertheless did not involve people actually planning to blow people up or stab people.
Yeah, I mean, these were just angry words that were ill-advised.
I don't want to be friends with these people.
No.
And I want them to be named and shamed, but I don't necessarily think they should be behind bars. No. But named and shamed by, local community. Did you see what she wrote? I will have an opinion on that forever,
Exactly.
Can I say what Keir Starmer has had to say? Sorry about that, everybody. You're not listening to him, it's me saying it. So this leaked to Home Office report, and it's talked also about that says that spreading conspiracy theories, misogyny, so hatred of women, violence against women and girls, and an online subculture called the manosphere, Andrew Tate and his mates, basically, brother and whatever, should be deemed extremism. That's what that Home Office report also says. Now, Keir Starmer has warned the UK has, he says, a cohort of loners who are extreme and need to be factored in. As this leaked Home Office review says, we need to deal with concerning behaviours and activities rather than ideology. So it's not what you think, it's what you do. Well, isn't this weird? Because for everyone else, it's what we think and not what we do. Isn't that weird?
Yes.
But he said the government is looking carefully where the key challenges on extremism are, We already know where they are, Islamism. It's adding it is very important to focus on threats so we can deploy our resource properly. He says, obviously, that's now informed with what I said last week in the aftermath of the Southport murders, where we've got the additional challenge, I think, he says, of a cohort of loners who are extreme and they need to be factored in. In the end, what this comes down to is the safety and security of people across the United Kingdom. That's my number one focus. But he also talked about this online subculture called the manosphere. I mean, but again, it's all just words. I don't think any of it means anything. And look, and there is this sort of misogynistic culture. Labour talk all the time about protecting women and girls. They're obsessed with talking about protecting women and girls. Didn't do it over the grooming gangs. It was Labour councils that covered a lot of this stuff up. Labour councils. Again, Tories failed as well. Labour was a far bigger failure. Don't want the grooming gang scandal inquiry because it was Labour councillors, Labour MPs again and again. Any Labour MP who did speak up on that, by the way, career was ended. Overnight, career was ended. They've allowed women and girls to have to compete against men in sport. They've allowed and cheered on and voted for men who have convicted of rape to go into women's prisons to rape women prisoners. That was their policy. Labour supported that in Scotland. They've got no issue with that. Again, your lot also allowed it. I know I'm being cruel here, but they did. Not giving any quarter on this. Allowing men to be in rape shelters, in refuges, in hospital wards with vulnerable women. They talk a good game about protecting women and girls. But then they make women and girls as vulnerable as possible and do nothing about it.
They do, because they're not looking at the conviction rates for rapes at all. So women out on the streets are probably feeling less safe than they ever have
Conviction
done.
rate for rape is down
woeful.
to a lot of other factors. Yeah, but
it is woeful. And when you start looking at what they're saying about violence against women and girls and what their action is, when you look at the conviction rates for anything to do with violence against women and girls,
those down to juries. Poor. Juries aren't convicting because there's not evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't want people convicted without evidence beyond a reasonable doubt.
No, but they're not putting them forward. They're suggesting that they can go out on a licence. They're suggesting that there's not enough evidence for the crimes, and that is appalling. They're not looking into them enough, so people aren't feeling safe.
Yeah, I just find it extraordinary. I don't know how anybody, especially his background as a barrister, as a director of public prosecutions, can be just so and utterly out of touch with reality. I find it mind-blowing. But he is. I'd love to hear your reaction. 0344 499 1000. We'll get to as many of your calls as we can. We've just been speaking more about the population increase. It's absolutely fascinating what Stephen Wolfe said. ONS latest predictions. Every year they give another prediction of what it's going to be. They're basically saying that over a 10-year period from 2022, so 3 years ago, to 2032, in 7 years' time, so over that 10-year period, they reckon we're going to have an extra 5 million people in the country. That's basically 5 Birminghams, 5 populations of Birmingham, our second city. They're predicting our population will reach 72.5 million, bearing in mind virtually all of those. This is according to the ONS, not me making it up. Virtually, not because I'm a right-winger, apparently extreme right-wing for facts. The Office for National Statistics is extreme right-wing because, stating facts about immigration. The vast majority of that 5 million, like 4.9 plus million, will be immigrants. There will be net migration arrivals, okay? Given that all of their predictions to this point have all been massive underestimates, Stephen Wolfe has been looking into this, and he reckons we are looking at actually a population of 80 million people. It may well be 7 or 8 million more people. But no preparation. I mean, A, I don't want that many more people in the country. B, I don't think we should have mass immigration anymore. I don't think we can even cope with the people who are already here and aren't integrated and assimilated. See, we've got nowhere for them to live. We haven't got enough water. We haven't got electricity. We haven't got enough gas. We haven't got enough infrastructure. Haven't got enough hospital beds, haven't got enough for the people who are already here. We don't need any more. And no, they're not all brain surgeons and engineers, and they're not going to all be queer and cancer here.
No, and you're right, and I think that Stephen's estimate of 80 million is probably nearer to the mark, and it's probably going to increase that. Yeah, I think he's looked at the figures properly. The ONS has sort of said, I don't know, let's dial it down a bit so that the right wing don't get angry.
They've even upgraded within, from last year's by a few million to where they would be.
But it's not enough, is it? A few million, that's neither here nor there. It's not a rounding error.
It is utterly bewildering, isn't it? Let's also just talk about Just Stop Oil. They disrupted a West End play last night. Sigourney Weaver appearing in The Tempest. Love that play, actually.
It's brilliant.
It's one of those ones I did at school and still love, which
Yes.
is very unusual. Sigourney Weaver, fantastic actress. But Just Stop Oil turning up. Oh, these just turning up on stage, unfurling their banner and throwing orange glitter around. What I find interesting, though, is they were booed.
Yeah.
Now, okay, people pay a lot of money. You know, you've got your train to London, you've got your dinner out, your tickets cost a fortune, you know, and then your player's disrupted on your night out. You're going to miss your train home. You know what I mean? There's an impact for people, you know, and they got booed. I think a few years ago there would have been a lot of people in that audience going, "Oh yes, saving the planet, saving the planet." Yeah, that's gone now.
And people are fed up. They're having their travel disrupted. Artwork is being vandalised.
That breaks my soul, that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Desecrating graves.
Yeah, pathetic behaviour, and no respect for the actors on that stage who have rehearsed, they have worked incredibly hard to bring a play for people to enjoy, and that bunch stand up there with their orange sign.
They're just so, they're both sort of so pathetic and so hateful at the same time.
Yes, they are. Can we report them to Prevent? Because I think we need to. I would open up a whole category for that.
Exactly. No, it's different if you're on the gantry, the M25. I just need more hauling away. I think they need to go and do this in Glasgow. I've had a lot of Glaswegians get in touch saying, yeah, you do. They do it in certain places where they reckon they can get. Yeah. Good luck with that, mate. Good luck with that. I mean, you can see, remember when they were like, the guy, you know, tied his neck to the goalpost at a football match?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I mean, people just like, yeah, let's just carry on with the match.
Not having this.
Just carry on with the match, hit the goalpost, no one cares. Anyway, 11:19 is the time. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. How would you deal with Just Stop Oil? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Keep them legal. I don't want you referred to Prevent, for goodness sake. But I want to talk more about this leaked Home Office dossier. It just tells us about the rot at the heart of government. Oh, don't worry. Home Secretary's rejected this report. Yet you commissioned it from people in the Home Office. Who wrote this report? Who is behind it? Who are these people? And why are they so unbelievably out of touch with reality in this country? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Obviously, he talked about him in quite glowing terms on Air Force One, speaking to reporters yesterday. But we know that from people around him that he has a pretty dim view of a lot of things that Keir Starmer has been pursuing. Right. So it'd be interesting to see if he did kind of take him to task a bit more than the official readout from the UK side necessarily puts forward.
Right. Well, I mean, he's also got Elon Musk in his administration. He's been calling for Keir Starmer to be locked up. In the old days, you would sort of check what the Americans were saying about this phone call. But of course, they probably haven't issued anything in America about his phone call to Keir Starmer. Starmer, because nobody in America knows who Keir Starmer is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall also is still with us, former Home Office government advisor. I just keep throwing that in just to
like that.
You're being very chirpy. She's going to tell me off at the end of the show. But this Home Office report, this leaked dossier revealing the Home Office plans to revive non-crime hate incidents. What, revive them? I mean, they literally just want, have more of them. And also two-tier policing claim is extremism. And basically, we need to worry about, what people's, not about their ideologies, what they think, what they actually do, and whether they're, incels or whatever. That's the concern, as opposed to, let's be honest, Islamist extremism is the biggest single threat in this country. That is the biggest single threat. Maybe that's where most of the resources should go. I know. Mind-blowing, eh? Let's get to your calls, though, about all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. And Mandy is on the line. She is in Worcester. Hello, Mandy.
Hello, Julia. Hello, Claire.
Hello. What would you want to say?
It's about the leaked Home Office report. Yeah. I was just wondering if obviously it's been rejected.
Well, now.
Would it have been rejected? It's because it was leaked.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
Or am I just being cynical?
No, I think you're being very accurate. We know what Yvette Cooper thinks about these things. We already know they wanted more non-crime hate incidents. We know the whole government has told us all we're right wing for talking about Pakistani grooming gangs, and I mean this even used the term alleged grooming gangs.
I know. I bet Maggie Oliver would have something to say about that.
Yeah, well, I bet quite a lot of 13-year-old girls who have been gang raped might have something to say about it as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, what an insult!
I know. I was just wondering if it would have also applied to the weekly pro-Hamas marches.
And that's what they are now. I mean, they're fortnightly, but they are. I mean,
yeah,
they are.
I mean, they shout, they're shouting out in River to the Sea and all that sort of stuff, and other anti-Semitic and anti-British vitriol, to be honest.
Yeah.
Would that have also applied to them? Would they have been charged with these non-crime hate incidents?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but again, this is the thing, isn't it? It depends. This is where the thought police come in. What should be done about this? I mean, in terms of if these people are being asked by whether they're Home Office civil servants, outside people, we don't know. But they've been paid. They didn't do this for free. They've been paid by our taxpayers' dollar, by the Home Secretary, to carry out this review after this horrific mass, attempted mass murder of young girls at a Taylor Swift concert, and then the outbreak of riots across the country post Southport. So who are these people carrying out these reports? How much influence do they have?
I think they have an awful lot of influence. I think they have more influence than a lot of people think. I think they come up with all the ideas and then present them to the ministers. And most of the time, the ministers don't really have a clue.
No, I'm with you all the way. Mandy, thank you so much indeed. Not being cynical, just being realistic. Let's get some of your texts and tweets coming in. Jeff says, this report misrepresents legitimate public concerns as extremism and could stifle free speech. I think that's what it wants to do, Jeff. Gideon says the Home Office simply isn't fit for purpose. I mean,
it hasn't been for some
that's
time.
what, since the 80s. Sam says that makes me far right then, because we certainly do have two-tier policing. Joe says they've no idea what extreme right wing is. Kelly says the far right look like the majority normal, regular humans. Francis says this just confirms their desperation to try and control the narrative and deflect from what is really happening. Two-tier policing is obvious. Richard says, I would be more comfortable if the Home Office let hard-working and dedicated police officers concentrate on dealing with actual crimes. Richard. silly Richard and your, sensible views. Far-right bigot. That's what you must be for thinking that. Let's go to another call right now. Stuart is in Wigan. And Stuart, you want to comment on this report as well?
I do, yeah. I won't comment on police, really. But before I start, I'll just hold my hands up saying that I'm far-right, I'm a bigot, I'm racist, I'm everything else that he wants to call me, because I couldn't care less what's them, I think, to be honest.
Yeah.
But the police, to be honest, I mean, they're about as low in my estimations as he is. But anybody that can turn a blind eye to kids getting abused because they might get called racist or they might upset Pakistani people, I couldn't care less.
I know it is
could not care less.
It is still utterly bewildering that happened. In terms of the police, though, in terms of this idea that there should be more non-crime hate incidents recorded, and police and prevent should concentrate on, loners and not concentrate quite so much. I mean, you've got to spend more time dealing with that. You're going to spend less time dealing with the Islamist threat, aren't you?
Yeah, but that suits the police as far as I'm concerned, because they don't want to do the job. I mean, to be honest, I don't know, because I've not yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to have about 1,000 of them non-crime hate things, because I say things as they are.
Yeah, no, I've put in requests to the Met Police to find out whether I've got any recorded against me, because it'd be nice to know whether I did, get them taken off my record. I'm not quite sure what job it would prevent me from getting, but there we are. Really appreciate your call, Stuart. Thank you very much. That's the thing, it's that Dominic Frisby song, we're all far right now, we're all far right now. I mean, because that's the thing. You tell everybody that their views and based on facts are far right, then everyone is. Let's go to another call. Just get Ben in. He's on the line in Essex. Ben, you want to talk about this latest projection on our population, which basically is going to add, it claims, 5 million people over a period of 10 years, but basically it's a low estimate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and I think this whole being diverse has been confused and almost weaponised against us, because the thing is we're being told being diverse is welcoming all these people and it's eroding culture. I mean, being diverse is, I want to go to France and appreciate French culture. Yeah. Come to England and appreciate, our values and all of it.
And we're always told if you go somewhere else, you should respect. If you go to a Middle Eastern country, you should dress, modestly. If you're a woman, if you go to Japan, they expect, these are the do's and the don't. But come here, no, do anything you want, because we don't have a culture worth protecting.
I know, and the thing is, our country's been formed over hundreds of years. We've got British values, a monarchy, and it's just being completely ignored. And, and these people that come from these countries, I don't know, Uzbekistan or wherever, are coming over, and I don't believe they care about our values or our monarchy. It's just they're used to doing what they're doing, and it's not racist. It's just unfortunate these people live a different way and and not being diverse. And I think we need to be tough and stand up to this, because it's going to affect our.
But we should be proud of our culture. And again, there's so much stuff. I mean, all the messages we get, whether it's Sadiq Khan's fireworks on New Year's Eve, or the government, or the King's statements now, it's all about diversity is our strength. Diversity built Britain. No, it didn't. No, we're actually an incredibly homogenous country, and actually homogeneity has been the strength for most countries that do well. But the point is, if you go move to another country, whether it's for work or whatever, you should adopt the values of that country. If otherwise, don't go and live there. And I felt the same way about if I went somewhere else, I would learn the language, I would have to adopt those values. Lots of countries I wouldn't go and live in because I don't agree with their values or their culture. I don't enjoy their culture. So I wouldn't go and live in most Middle Eastern countries. I don't want to live somewhere that is homophobic and where women are second-rate citizens and it's normal for everyone to be anti-Semitic. Sorry, not the values I share, so I don't want to go and live there. It seems to me to be very basic. Diversity is not our strength. I couldn't care less what colour your skin is, but I do care about your ability to speak the language, your values, whether you're a net contributor or not. I know it may benefit you. If it doesn't benefit the rest of the people already here, I don't know why we're opening the door to you. And yet that's Home Office policy, right, Claire?
It does seem to be. Unfortunately, they don't want to turn anybody away in case they cause offence, but we're not looking at the needs of the country.
Yeah, exactly. It really is that simple. We've been told for years the abject lie that net immigration is actually an economic benefit to us. No, it's not. It's a net benefit to companies that want to pay below minimum wage. That's what it's a benefit to. Just the latest news. Pleased to hear this, folks. Two Just Stop Oil protesters who disrupted a West End performance of The Tempest last night, starring Sigourney Weaver, have been arrested. A 42-year-old woman and a 60-year-old man, old enough to know better if it were them. But anyway, two Just Stop Oil protesters have now been arrested. Good. 11:32 is the time. We'll take a break. Up next, going to talk to the brilliant, the wonderful Helen Joyce. As Donald Trump stamps out woke ideology across the United States, starting very first and foremost with the military. We'll talk about that and how trans athletes will not be allowed, we hope, to compete against women in the Olympics in the US next. That's coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall still with me as well. Delighted now to be joined by very commonsensical Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters and author of the wonderful book Trans, Gender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. Very good morning to you, Helen.
Hi, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Well, there's certainly a new battle for women's rights in the States. This was something very, very clear that Donald Trump campaigned on for the presidency. He was going to get rid of a load of woke ideology and protect women and girls and get rid of the trans ideology from pretty much everywhere he could. One of his first executive orders I was thrilled to see was saying the federal government will only recognise two genders, male and female. That's it, because that's all they are. My goodness me, we were all very thrilled about that. Now we're expecting an executive order to be signed today, basically banning all DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, from the US military, where there's actually been a deliberate policy of promoting someone because they are women or gay or trans or black or whatever, because over and above merit, because they wanted to have a more diverse military. He's now saying military is a fighting force. His defence secretary saying it's about military might. It's not about being woke. It's all over. Do you welcome that?
Of course, there seem to be two elements. It hasn't come out yet in the exact detail, but from what we can tell from the reporting, the two elements are: one, the military has a purpose. And when you have a purpose as an organisation, everything you should do should be focused on achieving that purpose. We shouldn't be thinking about the people inside the organisation so much as achieving the purpose of the organisation. And the second is it's been very misreported. I had to look through all the headlines. It's saying that transgender people will be banned from the military. It absolutely isn't saying that.
Yeah, well, I was concerned about that. Yes, I think a lot of people were. Again, we're not anti-trans, we're just pro-women.
It's really the same as he did 8 years ago when he was previously in power, and that was misreported then too. And I actually went and looked at the order that was written back then, 8 years ago. It was really simple. It just said that when you apply to enter the military in the US, if you're male, you're going to be treated as a male person. If you're female, you're going to be treated as a female person. So no more men coming in on the standards that are set for women, and no more men coming in and bunking with and changing with and showering with women, which is obviously... I can't believe we even need to say this. So yes, totally welcome.
But there are, tens and tens and tens of thousands of US troops who apparently are identified as trans.
Yeah, I don't have numbers to hand, but yes, if you let men get in. Is fulfilling the conditions that are set for women, you're going to get men who aren't very fit getting in. So why would you not try to do it that way?
Well, that's the thing. The fact sheet apparently on the order says there could be no accommodations made for, they say, anything less than resilient strength and the ability to withstand extraordinary physical demands. Individuals unable to meet these requirements are unable to serve in the military. So obviously, there are women aren't as physically strong. The strongest, physically strongest woman is going to be unlikely to be stronger than the strongest average man. We know that there are different expectations, like special forces and the like. But when you've got men who are taking hormones, who are making themselves less strong, not able to actually do the job they've applied to do.
It's actually about the surgeries more than anything else. The US military has top-of-the-line healthcare, which you would expect and want for people who are meant to be serving their country. And it's been offering a lot of transgender surgeries, but these are very major surgeries on your genitals, for example, that make you unwell for a long time. So they're saying don't come into the military because what you want is the surgeries, because it's going to put you out of action.
And a lot of people, again, it's like the things a lot of people who join the military, because then you'll get your college paid for after certain, you're not going into hundreds of thousands in debt after you've done your military service, but also go into the military and then you can get your trans operations, your surgeries done basically on the US taxpayer. I think that's been a massive issue too. We've also seen some really senior figures in the US military who, with all due respect, again, wear what you want, dress what you want, but if you're in the military and you have to look a certain way, project, you're representing your government to a certain extent, your military, who frankly look absurd, and it's sort of like cosplay. We've often talked about, how we talk about, the offensiveness of blackface, but woman face is perfectly acceptable. And it's a lot of women just frankly just find it insulting.
They're just saying, look, there are two sexes. We set rules. You're going to have to follow the rules. It's really a bad idea anywhere, but especially in the military or something similar like the police force, to be saying you can come in here and you can expect us to rewrite the rules for you. It's just not that sort of organisation, and it shouldn't be.
Indeed. We've certainly seen all that stuff being pushed in our military as well, and undermining us as a fighting force. A lot of Americans I know are saying, can we push this wider? We want this not just in federal government, not just in the military. We want this in schools. Now, of course, you've got federal and state funding of US schools. But I know, looking on social media, we think we've got it bad here. And by the way, as you and I have discussed many times, most parents are completely unaware of the utter madness that's going on in schools under this guise of DEI and what's being taught to our children. Complete lies. If you wonder why, you think it's all happening on TikTok. No. Your child's teacher is often telling them they're born in the wrong body, and stuff for which, frankly, I think people should be sacked on the spot. But the ideology being pushed in American schools, in nurseries. Go on, I've got a friend with a kid at a nursery. They have a Pride Day. What? Why would you need a Pride Day for 3-year-olds, for goodness sake? Why are you talking about sexuality with 3-year-olds? I'm literally like, I want to see everyone's hard drive at that point. But do you think this is going to go further, and the new regime is going to be able to get this out of schools? And does that bode well for us?
What we'll see is the limits of federal power here, because there is a lot of power that the federal government holds, but it doesn't hold all the power. The main weapon that it has is funding. Under Obama and then under Biden, federal funding was reliant on you accepting identity claims about gender identity. So for things like women's shelters, for any school that received federal funding, for any university that received federal funding, you had to accept that people could identify as the opposite sex. That then is getting undone. So it's not the ideal way to do it, that you go hardline one way and then right back to sanity, and then hardline again and then right back to sanity. But I think they're better prepared now than they were 8 years ago. They really understand how much this has got embedded in institutions across the country and how hard they're going to have to fight to get it back out.
And the parents are now more aware of it and are as horrified
yes, that's
by
right.
it. I mean, I think certainly the pressure on universities is going to be really important in terms of how they're treated as charities. Their endowments aren't taxed, and the Harvards and everywhere who are pushing this madness. And basically, and again, thought policing, sacking, basically bullying out academics who won't basically be forced into saying a lie that they believe men, trans women are women and men can become women. They've got quite a lot of financial pressure they can put on there. And at the end of the day, money always talks.
I have a strong feeling as well that 8 years later, an awful lot more people are really sick of an awful lot of this. Yeah. And if they're given an excuse to abandon it all, they'd take it with alacrity. We've already seen many companies, for example, get rid of senior DEI jobs themselves. We saw this all before Trump was elected, on the basis really of financial.
Yeah, it's holding us back.
These are not helping you to the bottom line. Yeah. So if people want to, they will move quickly, and then hopefully 4 years of not being allowed to do it, they won't bring it back in if they're allowed to do it again.
We certainly hope so. And again, you're getting an awful lot of people who aren't doing anything of any use, but are actually, and people say like in the NHS in the UK, oh yes, but only paying what 40 million for their DEI people. That's 40 million that could employ a lot of nurses, but also it's the work of those officers who actually are preventing good people getting on and doing their actual job. There's a massive sort of unproductive element to that. I also want to ask you about the Olympics. Now, we know the next Olympics is going to be held in the US, which is going to be interesting in of itself under Donald Trump. But it's increasingly looking likely, after various different candidates looking to take over as president of the International Olympic Committee, that, again, I hate it, even the Telegraph, transgender women are likely to be banned from the female category. We have given up the word woman. Trans-identified men are increasingly likely to be banned from women's sport. It looks like more and more of those candidates are saying, we're going to walk away from this. So there's not a ban. If this did happen, it wouldn't be a ban on trans athletes. No one's saying you can't compete. You just have to compete as what you are, a man or a woman.
Yeah, it's like boxing had gone insane and allowed heavyweight boxers into the flyweight category, and then somebody said someone's going to get killed here, and we're going to actually enforce the weight categories again, and everybody went up in arms and said, heavyweight boxers banned. No, everybody competes in their own category. It should never have been any different.
I think the Olympic boxing, the women's boxing, watching a woman being punched in the face by what was clearly a man, not trans man, but clearly a man. I think that brought it to the fore for an awful lot of people.
And it was always predictable. If you allow the rules to be broken, any sensible rules, if you change your rules to allow anybody to say that they're a woman and you don't check, you just rely on passports, which is what the Olympics boxing
and the passports don't rely on biology.
Exactly. Then you are going to get, sooner or later, and probably sooner, you are going to get men in sports where women are put in physical danger, not just cheated out of titles that they should have won. So it was predictable. It should have been stopped before it happened. But,
well, it wasn't just
the best
predictable.
time was yesterday. The next best time is now.
It wasn't just predictable. It was predicted. You people like you were talking about this stuff for a very long time. And again, I think, is everyone just waiting for a woman to get brain damage from this? It's almost like there was a reason why we had women's sport. It's almost like there was a reason why we had women's prisons. And yet, bizarrely, in this country, there are still some men who claim to be trans women, but are not women. They are men who are in women's prisons right now, in England right now.
And there's a case in Scotland at the moment where a woman is being taken to court because she's being too unkind about the fact that there's a man locked up with her. She's the one who's being tried. She's being tried for harassment in Scotland right now.
How dare she harass the man who's sharing her prison cell?
Yeah.
I mean, every now and then, Helen, I think we're making leaps forward. And then you say something like that, and I'm...
The only way out is through at this point, Julia. We just have to keep exposing the madness for what it is and letting them tell on themselves.
Yeah, and that's you're right, because for many years people simply weren't aware of it. Remember that whole thing like, why are you bothered by this? It's just a few Men wearing dresses, what's the big deal? Yeah, well, it wasn't just that, and it's on a huge scale. Helen, you and everyone at Sex Matters done magnificent work on this. Helen Joyce, thank you, as always, for joining us. Claire Pissell, I mean, I still remember the fact that Helen Joyce, with this brilliant book, it was absolutely a groundbreaking book, couldn't get on Women's Hour on Radio 4. No, didn't want to know. But they're all woke now, aren't they? They're all woke now. It's just been talk. I've been banging on about this stuff as long as Helen has. I mean, but thank God it's now wider. And this was a key issue. I think this was a winning issue for Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. People want women's spaces, women's sports, women's prisons, refuge, whatever, to be for women. It is quite simple. If you're a man, you're a man. If you're a woman, you're a woman. And I don't understand
Call yourself
why.
what you want.
Yeah, I don't care.
Don't care. Don't care. Not
you want to live your life, but don't try and infringe it on mine.
Yeah, but also, and on the rights that our great grandmothers and grandmothers and mothers fought for.
You know, my son was very good. He just said they need to stay in their own lane.
Quite literally. Yeah, exactly. 11:47 is the time. We'll take a quick break. We're going to get to the bottom of this Chinese AI chatbot that has completely smashed, broken, popped the AI bubble. What's it all about? We're going to try to get to the bottom of it. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
What's the purpose of a strategy if it's not actually preventing? We need to strip it back, actually. We have inquiry upon inquiry, this failing, that failing, but what do we do post-inquiries? We just sit back on our laurels and we get on with our day until something else happens. It's shocking and disgusting and disturbing that actually so many parties were aware by this evil individual, but yet nobody actually took action. Early help, attendance, ECHPs. How many more prevent strategies that we're not preventing are we going to see in the future? We need to now take action.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Now we're going to try and get to the bottom of AI. What is it and what is the big news on AI, and why has a Chinese chatbot taken over, well, collapsed the AI bubble in America. Let's talk about all this with Michael Simmons. He's data editor at The Spectator and joins us now. Hello to you.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, I'm going to have to go seriously Janet and John on this. I need some really basic stuff. There's a big story. It's all over the front pages. We're talking about a huge sums of money wiped off the NASDAQ index because of this. I want to hear from you, then, first of all. Can we just start basics? What is AI?
So AI is basically a kind of way of making computer software where what the computer is trying to do, it gets better over time by sort of learning from its mistakes. Right. So if you think of, say, like a search engine, you know, you type in what you want to search, there's sort of preconditions, and it will come back with hopefully what you're looking for. But what AI does in that case is it says, okay, I didn't get it quite right, or I got it spot on, and then it adjusts and gets better over time. Right. And that allows us to now have things such as ChatGPT, where you can essentially have a kind of human conversation with the computer. So AI
and it can write your essay for you at school.
Yeah, it can write your essay at school. Scarily for you and I, it can write news bulletins. It can do research. It can cheat on exams.
Yeah. I have to say, it's my experience of it and what I've seen, it's not as good as people think it is. The AI answers, when I do it on my phone and I'm looking for something on Google, the AI answers, I think, are often risibly bad. But now, the key thing is we've got, you say, ChatGPT, we've got OpenAI. These are huge, big companies. They're American companies, and they use a huge amount of computing power, huge amount of electricity, huge amount of actual real, almost real estate and hardware to actually create this AI ability, don't they? But what's happened in the last 24 hours, this revelation, the Chinese have come up with an AI app called DeepSeek. I do want to know who comes up with these names other than 14-year-old boys. But DeepSeek has been launched. What is the big news on DeepSeek? What is different about it?
So DeepSeek has like a lot of Chinese products and manufacturing it's essentially the cheap version of these AI chatbots. And the reason it's wiped off $1 trillion off US stocks yesterday is because, as you say, AI takes all this computing power. It needs these complicated chips that the West had thought that was kind of safe and protected by us, because these factories that make these chips are so complicated that there's one in Taiwan, there's some in the US, they're basically nowhere else. And it was thought, oh, the Chinese will never be able to undercut us in this way, in the way they have almost any part of manufacturing. And what's really spooked the markets and spooked people is that this Chinese AI DeepSeek appears on the face of it to perform as well as the Western AIs, ChatGPT, OpenAI, etc. But it's done that without access to these chips, so that's what's really freaked people out.
And they've actually been quite strict, sanctions and inability for China to get hold of these chips. They've been using much simpler chips. I don't understand how computer chips work, so I'm starting from a very basic level here, and no one thought that this was possible. But it's not just a bit cheaper, is it? You say it's a fraction of the cost, and all of this many billions has been invested in AI technology so far as the future. And Donald Trump announcing he was going to invest, the government's invest $500 billion into AI. The future, it's the future of computing, of healthcare, of defence, of everything. And then this company in China goes, we've done it for a fraction of the cost. That has thrown everything into disarray.
Yeah, I mean, it may well come out that this chatbot is not as impressive as it's being claimed, but initially it seems like it is up there. And as you say, so much of basically the future idea of Western industrialism is all about AI. And if it is the case that China can just do it much cheaper without stuff that we think that the West controls, then it's just going to be another chapter in our historic trade war where they just undercut us again.
I mean, but a lot of Chinese undercutting in various other areas of tech and the like has actually been by China using cyber spies, basically hacking information from British academia, from American academia and companies, and basically they routinely stealing stuff, stuff that is patented and using that technology. We don't think this has been done that way.
Yeah, no one seems to be suggesting that, but I think it might more be the effect of when we sort of had this chip war a few years ago, when people were worried that this was what was going to happen, and there was various embargoes put on to stop China accessing these chips. It's probably sort of galvanized Chinese industry to work together more in a way than they were doing before, which is probably what's got them to this point, because it must simply be that they've either managed to make these chips or have found a way to, produce this AI software in a less of energy and computationally intense way.
I mean, unless you've got, your pension fund is entirely invested in, whoever owns, ChatGPT or OpenAI or these companies, or all your money's in the NASDAQ index, does this affect us? I mean, is this a good thing? If it could be cheap, if it could be done more cheaply, using fewer resources, even less electricity, cheaper chips, isn't that a good thing for us as consumers?
Yeah, you can look at it that way. That as you say, if you're not directly invested in it, it may be like many Chinese things that end up making life cheaper. One kind of sort of funny aside from it is it may have actually helped out the Chancellor Rachel Reeves a bit, because obviously we've been talking for weeks about how the costs of borrowing are so high as a result of her budget. As sort of investors on the markets freaked out about this, they all started buying government bonds, which are traditionally the safest way to invest your money, and that result of that is it's brought the borrowing costs down considerably yesterday. So the weird winner from this story might actually be Rachel from accounts.
The irony. Michael, I must say I hugely appreciate this. Just one final thing, very briefly. It was very, very briefly, about 30 seconds. How is AI going to change my life, my audience's life? What's it going to do?
I'm positive about it. I don't think it's going to take our jobs or anything. I think it's going to make us more efficient. The mundane admin tasks, the things that are repetitive, we're going to be able to get done quicker. And as long as people, are prepared to push themselves and work how to use it, I think it's going to get us productive again. It's going to get us growing, and we shouldn't worry about it.
Okay, good to hear. Michael Simmons, data editor at The Spectator, thank you very much. I always say, genuinely, explaining something very complicated, to me, someone who knows nothing about something, that's a real talent. Thank you so much to Michael for that. I feel I understand it all a bit more. I mean, DeepSeek, the name, goodness me. Everyone is up in arms, but it's sort of like, this is the only way to do it. It's cost all these resources. Chinese have gone, I wonder, though, whether it's going to turn out to be as good as they say it is.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it could well be the turning of a corner, that you don't need such large, complicated chips. Not that I know.
One of the biggest issues over China is they're wanting to basically take Taiwan.
Yeah.
They claim it's still part of China.
Yeah.
But Taiwan is where all these chips are made. I'm thinking it's an idea like maybe we shouldn't just have one country making all the chips that we rely on for our future.
Well, that would be good, wouldn't it?
Just throwing that out there.
We're way behind, aren't we?
We are way behind on all that. And my experience of AI is that it's
been rubbish,
bloody useless. So far. I'm sure it'll improve in the future. We shall see. But then these are the same people who want us to live in this sort of meta universe as well. I don't want to. I want to live in real life. Yeah. I'd quite like kids to read a book and write an article about, write an essay about it and learn about it, rather than getting a computer to do it. Because I don't think anyone's going to know anything in 20 years' time. They literally won't have to know anything at all. Not sure that's going to be good for the human race, but there we are. A bit of a Luddite on this, aren't I? Anyway, more from Claire, more from me. Up next, going to talk to the fabulous Brendan O'Neill. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is fantastic to have your company. It has been a rip-roaring, very lively show so far, and I hope it will be for the next hour. I'm sure it will, judging by the fantastic guests I've got. Still in the studio, former Conservative Government advisor Claire Pearson, who's now regretting having worked in a Home Office because we're having a right old go at her. But no, it's a Home Office now. Even worse. Here's the thing, even worse than when you were at the Home Office.
Exactly.
Wow, imagine that, imagine that. But coming up in this hour, we're going to talk more about the leaked Home Office review, which we already know about because it's been leaked to the Policy Exchange think tank. But it claims that two-tier policing is, wait for it, an extreme right-wing narrative. You just made it up in your little bigoted heads. That's the problem. Claiming that right-wing extremists frequently exploit the grooming gang scandal to promote anti-Muslim sentiment, except they don't refer to it as the grooming gang scandal or the rape gang scandal. They refer to it as the alleged, I kid you not, the alleged group-based sexual abuse. The review also urges police to record more non-crime hate incidents to combat violent extremism, even though there's no evidence whatsoever that NCHI in any way tackle violent extremism, because they're not crimes and there are plenty of crimes that need to be tackled. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has said today that she ordered the review last summer, post the Southport attack and the riots, but she's rejected the report's recommendations. But how on earth did they come up with these recommendations? These are people surely working at the heart of the Home Office. Why are those people being paid for by you and me when they clearly haven't got a clue what they're doing? Coming up later, we're also going to be talking to the author and Times columnist Melanie Phillips about her brand new book. It's called The Builder's Stone, How Jews and Christians Built the West and Why Only They Can Save It. She describes it as a manifesto for saving Western civilization. Also going to talk about the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. He's to drop women's health targets from the new NHS plan. It's prompted accusations that he's sidelining female patients. Talk about all of that, plenty more to come. Claire Pearson, as I say, is still with us. Just before we go to our next guest, now we've learned all about what AI is all about. I wonder if AI wrote that leaked Home Office dossier. It would kind of explain it all more, wouldn't it?
It would, and if it's going to learn from the people that are around it interacting with it, then yes, it's going to become even more left-wing lunacy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to learn that.
They would explain it. It would absolutely explain it, would it not? Right, well, let's go to our next guest. Delighted to welcome, as we now regularly do, the chief political writer at Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill. A very good afternoon to you, Brendan.
Hey, Julia, how's it going?
So very well indeed. Thank you very much indeed for joining. Well, it's going better for me than it is for the Home Office, I have to say. This leaked review, ordered by the Home Secretary, now rejected. I don't think we'd know anything about it, what the people who work for her actually think, unless it had been leaked to Policy Exchange. What do you make of the extraordinary suggestions in that review that I've just outlined?
It's shocking but not surprising. That's my approach to a lot of things that the government comes up with these days. It's really useful to know that even though this has been rejected by Yvette Cooper, it's useful to know that these kinds of people work in the Home Office. Yeah. The kind of people who are supposed to be looking after the security of this country think that it's a far right talking point to go on about grooming gangs and think that it's, these are alleged grooming gangs in their words, and they think it's a right-wing conspiracy that there's two-tier policing. It's useful for us to know that such out-of-touch snobs and idiots are working in the Home Office who look upon the rest of us with what seems like contempt. It is not right-wing, or certainly not far-right, to be concerned about the exploitation of working class girls by gangs of men. That is not a right-wing issue.
Or to state facts that the vast majority of the perpetrators of this particular kind of sex abuse of girls was carried out by men from Pakistan heritage.
They've learned nothing. This is what landed us in this horrible scandal in the first place, an unwillingness to be honest about it, an unwillingness of local officials, local police forces and the political class more broadly to be honest about the fact that up and down England there were gangs of mostly Muslim Pakistani men who were exploiting mostly white working class girls. The reluctance to talk openly about that was what allowed it to continue, and which, essentially these girls were sacrificed at the altar of political correctness. And that is still a lingering belief in sections of the Home Office.
I don't think it's I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's definitely we know it, not a belief for the large members of the public who know this, what happened. But the Home Office is still, you say, very uncomfortable about it. Senior ranks of the police as well, and in the media as well, all uncomfortable about it. But what did you make also what this review was saying about extremism and how we need to focus on, on people's actions? That makes sense, rather than the ideology. But ignoring, and this obviously comes out, Axel Rudin-Cabana, again, a lot of this information was known to the authorities, but not to us until the sentencing, that he had been looking at very extremist ideology, including this Al-Qaeda manual, a terror offence in itself, the possession of that manual, but looking at, white genocide and beheadings and goodness knows what, every nasty thing on the internet he was finding. But what is extraordinary is talking about how you've got these lone wolves and we need to focus on these people and actions rather than ideologies. But we know that the vast majority of attacks that are both planned, carried out, and the vast majority of people who are killed as a result of Islamist ideology. And there are some from far-right ideology, and we know that. When you think of, Thomas Mayer, the horrific murder of Joe Cox and the Finsbury Park attack, but that is a small percentage compared to the Islamist threat. If we're going to sort of take it out of the ideological and not look so much at that, what people are motivated by, doesn't that put us in danger of missing a far greater terror threat?
Absolutely right. This is another form of denialism, another case of the government just putting its head in the sand and refusing to look at the problems that we face. This year is the 20th anniversary of the 7/7 bombings in London. And in those 20 years, I think around 100 people in Britain have been killed by radical Islamists. That dwarfs every other ideological group, including the far right, by a huge amount. And of course, if there are kids who are going off the rails or carrying knives or getting involved in murderous thoughts, which is what was the case with the killer in Southport, and the police and the local officials fail to stop him, fail to think about what might be done in his case, that of course needs to be investigated to the fullest extent by the police. Those are criminal ideas and criminal actions, and they should be investigated and punished. But we still need counter-terrorist police to investigate ideological terrorists who want to kill people in the name of radical Islam. We cannot lose sight of the threat that poses.
No, indeed, and in so many of those cases, the link to radical hate preachers, some of whom now behind bars, some of whom have been deported, but people who are allowed on our streets to preach that hate, and that ideology just being all pervasive online. It does seem to me that it's almost like we're always fighting the last of the wrong things that we should be fighting. I find it extraordinary that our authorities seem to think that it's impossible to fight Islamist extremism, far-right extremism, and the lone wolves motivated by just whether it's misogyny or white genocide or whatever it is. I don't understand why these people, any of them, are falling through the gaps. If you don't fit into one category, oh well, I'll pass you over to people over there on that desk. Oh no, they're at lunch, so they'll miss it. We've got to have a better system than that.
Absolutely. We have this very managerial approach, this very technocratic approach. Well, who should look after this and who should look after that? What we need is a moral commitment to tackling all dangerous crimes and all ideological terrorism. But there's this real reluctance to be honest about the Islamist threat in particular. We're discouraged from talking about radical Islam. You're accused of Islamophobia if you raise this problem. You remember after the Manchester Arena bombing in which 22 kids were slaughtered, we were told, don't look back in anger.
Oh, don't. It still makes me so angry.
We're constantly having our attention dragged away from this very serious threat to this country. It is not Islamophobic to talk about Islamist terrorism. It is not racist to talk about grooming gangs, and people are sick and tired of having those accusations levelled against them.
And it is fascinating, like my callers and so many people online will go, right, call us far-right, call us bigots. We don't care anymore. I was called a bigot and far-right for voting for Brexit, as were you. These words almost have no meaning anymore. And when a word like when racist and fascist and bigot and far-right, when those words cease to have a meaning, well then what words do you use about those actual people and those actual horrible ideologies? And this is the craziness of what we're told the moderates have done. But of course, as one of our callers, hinted at earlier, we talk about, it's extreme to be concerned about, mass immigration from countries where people are not sharing our values. And we've seen that We saw that with the grooming gangs. That was what was happening. And you're saying that's extremist. Isn't it extremist to say it's okay for 13-year-old girls to be gang raped because I don't want anyone to think I've got the wrong views when I'm a local police officer or a social worker or leader of the local council? I mean, I'm thinking most of us would see that was extremist. We've got to turn these things on their head, haven't we? I mean, do you have any hope at all? I mean, I didn't have much hope in the last government's efforts, even though there were people like, I think, Suella Braverman and others who were actually speaking out on some of these issues and refusing to be cowed on it. I think Kemi Badenoch says and thinks genuinely and has done for a long time very sensible things on this. But I think back to like David Cameron, he said a lot of this stuff. He was really straight about it, didn't do anything about it, exacerbated the problem. Do you have any hope whatsoever, and I think I know the answer to this question, Brendan, that this Home Office under Yvette Cooper and this government under Keir Starmer is going to do anything to tackle any of these problems?
No, I really don't, sadly, because these are big problems and they need tackling. And you're absolutely right. You know, who's the extremist here? Is it the people on the internet saying, I don't want white working class girls to be abused and raped? Or is it all those local officials up and down the country who over the past 20 years thought that protecting political correctness was more important than protecting vulnerable girls from abuse? Who are the real extremists here? It's not us, it's them. And, you know, the issue here is that we are ruled by a technocratic regime that is just constantly covering its own back. It doesn't want to be accused of racism. It doesn't want to be accused of prejudice. It wants to fortify its own virtue and its own sense of prestige. And it puts that above everything else, including tackling radical Islam, tackling the grooming gangs problem. This is a self-serving elite that we live under. And until we break that, we're really not going to make any progress.
Absolutely. Can I ask you just also briefly about the non-crime hate incidents? This report, this review, apparently rejected by Yvette Cooper, even though she has previously said openly she thinks we should have more non-crime hate incidents, says we need to have more of them recorded because that's how you tackle extremism. What do you make of that?
Outrageous. Utterly outrageous. And I think we have to start really calling out the Stalinism of this idea that you can be hauled before the cops to answer for yourself and be recorded on a database simply for saying something that is not criminal, just something that the authorities don't like.
But that one person overheard and doesn't like.
That's right. Anyone who takes offence or thinks it was racist or transphobic or whatever else it might be, they can complain and then you're on a database. I mean, this is Orwellian. This is right out of East Germany. You know, people should not be recorded on a database unless they have broken the law. That has got to be the fundamental basis of a civilized society. Yeah. You know, non-crime hate incidents are a huge, colossal threat to freedom of thought and freedom of speech. And any suggestion that they should be brought back has to be really strong.
They're still ongoing right now. But what I find extraordinary is, can we, when we've dealt with all the crimes, maybe you can think about that. I'd still disapprove of it, but maybe deal with some crimes first. Can I also, there's two other stories I want to get to, because these are these sort of stories that you've been writing about many a time. The extraordinary new stats we've had out from the Office for National Statistics this morning, predictions and projections for the UK population, are staggering. They have predicted that from 2022, so 2 and a bit years ago, that our population will increase by 2032 by 5 million more people. That's 5 million people more in this country, almost entirely, the ONS says, from immigrants, from net migration in the 10-year period. That is 5 Birminghams, populations of Birmingham, our second city, arriving in the country in that time. This projection, by the way, is already way higher than the projection from last year. But it's also very likely to be wrong by being far lower than the reality, because they have repeatedly, every single year, massively underestimated net migration in this country. We spoke to Stephen Wolf a little bit earlier, who predicted actually that we're actually looking by 2032 of a population of 80 million people. What do you make of these projections?
You know, we live under a failing, creaking state, which, you know, we have government officials who have promised time and time again, and this is both the Tories and Labour, to lower the number of people coming to this country, to control the borders better, which is a fundamental requirement of a sovereign state. and to keep a check on who's coming here and how many are coming here. They've all promised it, and not one of them has delivered it. It really is a huge crisis. It is a crisis of epic proportions that we don't know who's coming to this country. We don't know why they're all coming here. We don't know how many there are going to be in 5 or 10 years' time. A serious democratic country should not be so out of control over its own numbers.
But hold on a minute. I mean, like most of these people are arriving legally. The government is issuing them visas. So they know.
Exactly. So they, in one breath, they promise to get a handle on the immigration numbers, and in the next, they're just bringing in more and more people. You know, the reason people want better control at the borders and a lower number of immigrants is not because they're xenophobic. It's not because they're racist. We live in a very diverse society, and people are fine. Most people are fine with that. What they think is that there are too many people coming. It's putting pressure on resources, and it's also, we have this porous border, both legally and illegally, where it seems anyone can just come into Britain on a whim. That is not how a serious country should work. Yep. And I really think it's time for the government to get serious about the numbers, to be honest with us, and to take real practical measures to lower the immigration figures.
Absolutely. I mean, again, good luck with that. Just fine. I'm going to end on a positive note. Donald Trump, all these executive orders, he's only been in office, well, I mean, actually, probably even right now, you know, less than a week. Expecting another executive order today, and this is going to be about tackling DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion in the military, basically saying, look, you're supposed to be a fighting force. If you want to join up and you want to fight, then if you're a man, you fight, you're a man, and if you're a woman, you're a woman. We only recognise 2 genders, so you can't be a trans person and a man, you know, basically in changing rooms and in a women's unit, etc., etc. Getting rid of all that madness, I would say. Do you welcome that, and do you think there's any chance some sanity will be restored here, whether it's our military or in our NHS or in schools or anywhere?
I do welcome that, and I think, you know, I'm not in favour of discriminating against anyone, but in the military, you need to know, is this a man or is this a woman? Because men and women tend to do different things in the military. They have different requirements, so we need to know the truth of someone's sex, and that's just all there is to it. But, you know, all these executive orders that Trump is coming out with, I think it's important to recognise what's going on here. This is not just a new president. This is not just another party in charge of America. He is single-handedly dismantling the entire ideology of the woke ruling class. Yeah. DEI, identity politics, the gender ideology, net zero. He says we will drill, baby, drill, and bring up all that golden liquid under our feet. He is really challenging the stranglehold of the woke ideology on the Western world more broadly, and that will have repercussions around the world, including, I hope, here in Britain.
Oh, fingers crossed. Brendan O'Neill, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Chief political writer at Spiked Online. Claire Pissell, your reaction to any or all of that?
Yeah, isn't he great?
I just think he's fab.
He's just so much common sense right there, and I think the stuff about the armed forces, spot on. You want men to be able to do their job. Yeah, and women are different. And we know that. It isn't hard. My strength is going to be very different to my husband, my son, etc. So why not stay in that?
You're giving your facts.
I know.
I keep telling people, you've got to stop using facts. It's very right-wing and bigoted. 12:20 is the time. Up next, can get to your calls. Lots coming in. We'll get as many as possible on air. 0344 499 1000 on, well, everything we're talking about. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
if you start to expand the definition of racist or expand the definition of who is anti-Muslim based on, a statement that they might make, then what happens is people who have to make those critical judgments about whether somebody is a danger or not start to back off. What then happens is the spotlight doesn't turn on that individual, it turns on you, because you then get accused of being prejudiced.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for your company. They are, of course, as I say, the Home of Common Sense. Claire Pistol's still with us. Lots of common sense on the phone lines, 0344 499 1000. Paul is on the line. He's in Newport. And Paul, you, actually, a lot of callers want to talk about those latest population projections. An extra 5 million people over 10 years. Nothing to see here. Paul, what do you want to say?
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
I think they honestly underestimate it. Okay, only because this isn't a UK problem. This is a global problem.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but in Sweden a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, they passed a law that if you are a migrant, or even if you have dual citizenship, if you break the law, you will be deported.
Yep.
And so all these other nations, we see Germany, parts of Germany have now said if you come in as an illegal migrant, you get bed, bread and water. That's it. You get nothing else. Well, every time these nations within Europe or anywhere else, they come up with these new rules because they've got the same problem as us. Well, those people want to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And if they look east or look west and go, oh, if we go over there, we get a house, money, and all this sort of stuff, education for the kids, they're all going to flood in.
Yeah.
Again, if we're honest, if we're honest with ourselves, okay, if we all lived in the Port of Calais, we'd be giving those guys boats and saying, it's over there, mate.
Yeah.
Because they don't want them any more than we want them.
No, exactly. But again, as you say, it is a global problem. And again, when we had all these rules about, these conventions on asylum seekers and the like, very, very different time. People didn't have mobile phones. They didn't know what life was like in other countries. They weren't able to travel so easily from the other side of the world. And, it's now a massive multi-billion-pound industry now, transporting people from one side of the world to the other. I mean, we're going to have to face up to that.
Well, it was David Attenborough, who's probably the brightest guy that, on the planet ever, really.
No.
He said, within the next 10 years, there will be migration, the likes of which the world has never known.
David Attenborough is in favour of optimum population and fully signed up to climate hysteria. I don't know what's happened, but he is... He's not someone I trust on pretty much anything these days, although he did have a nice time with those gorillas. But the thing is, Paul, again, I think you're right, this is an underestimate. It's going to be a massive problem. But you're talking about illegal migration in lots of those cases. Vast majority of people in this country are legal migrants. They've arrived here legally. They've got every right legally to be here. The people I have an issue with, I have an issue with illegal migrants. They've got no right to be here. But our biggest issue is with the governments and the authorities who have been told again and again by the voters, we do not want mass, uncontrolled migration, legal or illegal, and they have continued it. Boris Johnson, the number of people who still hold the candle for Boris Johnson, the million extra people a year turning up in our country, that was under a policy instigated by Boris Johnson.
But that's because they see people as either a source of revenue, i.e. they're all going to pay tax and we'll get some money, or they're a voter.
Yeah, but they're not all going to... It doesn't matter how much tax you pay if how much tax you pay is less than the cost of the services you use.
Absolutely. But that's because we're intelligent people. But you're not talking of intelligence. One of the issues... No.
I'm going to interrupt that because, Paul, we've been lied to for the last 10, 15 years by the government who's been telling us, every report said to us that the net effect of there's a net benefit from migration because people are net contributors.
Right.
Which is not true.
one of the main causes, okay, when you voted for your local MP, you voted for him to go into Parliament and be your mouthpiece. You say something, and then you say, okay, then on you go and tell them that. The MPs honestly believe we voted for them for their brain.
No, we actually have a different.
They're the brightest
MPs are not. No, MPs are not required to represent what their voters have told them to do. There's actually no. We don't have that kind of system. That is the interesting bit. Be careful of who you vote for, is what I would say. Paul, fantastic call. I'm going to leave it there because I want to get some other callers on. I hope you don't mind. Please do call again, though. Thank you so much. Kevin is on the line in London. Hi, Kevin. What do you want to say?
Oh, hello, Julia. Thank you for taking the call. I'm ringing about the issue of integration of different cultures within our society. Because isn't it obvious that if you do what has been done, which is basically to take whole village structures from rural Pakistan or Bangladesh and plonk them down in the middle of northern industrial towns like Burnley, Bradford, Nelson, it's going to raise rather profound issues of social cohesion.
But I mean, again, no one normal needs that explained to them. But apparently, that if you think that, you are a far-right bigot, you're an extremist.
That's right. And this is nothing against the people themselves. I mean, none of us has any control over the cultural environment into which we're born. But as you say, it's people have been pointing this out for not only years but decades and been dismissed. And there's one particular example I think it's worth recalling, and I think this is even going back to the early 1980s. There was a chap called Ray Hunniford, who was he was a headmaster of, I think, a middle school. So I guess that's what, age 8 to 13 or something like that. And he was appointed to be the head of a middle school in Bradford. And, in this school, a lot of the pupils there were from families originally from Pakistan. Now, what he said was, I mean, what he was not, he didn't go along with this National Front BNP stuff, send them all back. It was the exact opposite of that. He said, well, these people are here to stay, then fine. In that case, they're not visitors to this country or immigrants or anything else. They're British. We need to integrate them into British society, teach them British history, English language, all the rest of it. And he didn't do this in a vacuum. He had a role model, which was lots of Jewish people who had immigrated to places like Manchester and Bradford, and certainly been subjected to anti-Semitism, but which you don't want to see ever. But they had integrated within British society, and not only that, had become extremely successful in many cases.
Well, but there is a very different history from different groups, from different countries and different cultures, and their ability to integrate and assimilate and ability to speak English is a key part, but also just the values. But again, we didn't have Islamist extremism in this country a few years, some years back, 20 years ago. We didn't have rising anti-Semitism. Do you think these things are by any chance related? I do wonder. Look, we're going to have to leave it there. I've got to go to a break. But Kevin, I so appreciate your call. Thank you. Really thoughtful call there. Clippers, I mean, this is the thing. All these things underestimates of population, governments ignoring us. They live in their ivory towers. They don't live with the consequences. Their kids don't have the problem with getting into schools. They're not competing for the jobs. And they're living in just sort of a cloud cuckoo virtue signalling land. But integration is a massive issue. But they only meet, and I think I like my daughter's school, it's a private school, loads of people from massively different cultures. I mean, it looks like a Benetton ad or an Angela, Angelina Jolie sort of, family. But all the kids coming, everyone speaks perfect English. Their parents, work, have got high-paying jobs. Everyone is signed up to the same values. That's very different in many different schools.
It really is, but I think we've taken it to the other extreme by allowing schools, doctors, shops to have signs in multiple different languages. And when you don't allow somebody the chance to go learn English and learn to assimilate, you take that away from them and you say, we don't need to really, because we're just going to make it easy for you.
And it's different from expecting an airport to have signs in English. But that's because English is kind of the second language of the world. Absolutely. And that's how it works. Very, very different, isn't it? But anyway, thank you very much. More from Claire coming up. Up next, I'm delighted to say we're going to be talking to Melanie Phillips, just a fantastic thinker and writer on so many different issues. She's got a brand new book out. Basically, it's an astonishing book. It says it's called The Builder's Stone: How Jews and Christians Built the West and Why Only They Can Save It. You don't want to miss that. That's up next. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for your company. Right, let's get to our next guest now. She's Melanie Phillips, and she's the author of a brand new book called The Builder's Stone: How Jews and Christians Built the West and Why Only They Can Save It. A very good afternoon to you, Melanie.
Hello, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Now, it's quite a title to a book. It really is. Tell us your thesis.
Well, my argument is basically this, that the West has for decades been doing itself enormous damage. Its elites, intellectual and political elites, have been trying to destroy the West, its core values and its institutions, on the basis that the West is fundamentally bad because it's white, it's colonialist, it's imperialist, it's racist. And it's taken an axe to the family, to the education system, and above all to the idea of the nation itself, the Western nation. And it seemed to me that at the root of all these attacks, at the root of all this attack, this self-hatred by the West was an attack on the core building blocks of the West, which is, of course, the foundational creed of which is Christianity. But the core building blocks of Christianity, the core values behind the West, are indeed those of Judaism, which is Christianity's parent. And I think people will be very surprised to know quite how deeply Judaism has infused the West, not just in moral values like putting others first and moral responsibility, but actually the idea of a free society being based on laws that are based in common consent, the consent of the public. That's a Jewish value. Yeah. And now, to cut a long story short, it seemed to me that on October 7, or more precisely, the reaction to October 7, which in so many ways in the West was beyond disgusting and beyond reason, that reaction seemed to me to be have erased conscience, reason and justice. And that's precisely what the West has done to itself. And I think it's no coincidence, therefore, that a West that has attacked itself and its Jewish parent has turned on Israel and the Jewish people since October the 7th in this way.
It all ties in, that sort of the self-hatred, I suppose the sort of the view, the negative view of the values that built our country and the Western liberal system being totally undermined by everyone in power. I mean, the civil service, by the media, by everyone. Just, everything we've done is bad. Even the Industrial Revolution apparently was a bad thing for the world, even though that's the reason why we're all still alive. In our, in our age, we should be long dead by now without that. But it is interesting that you are Jewish, you're of faith. I was raised an atheist. I consider myself sort of fundamentalist atheist, but I also recognise the importance. I mean, absolutely, I've got no doubt at all. I absolutely recognise the importance of the Judeo-Christian culture and how vital that is to not just my value system, but the value system of my country, the laws, the culture, the freedoms, and actually, there's lots of evidence how important that was to creating things like, democracy, to the Industrial Revolution happening, scientific developments and the like. Yeah, how crucial that is. Why do you think so many in the West feel so negatively about Western liberal culture, about our own history? Because it seems to me that it is very much the elites. I don't think like the average Brit is embarrassed by their flag, they're not embarrassed by their royal family, they're not embarrassed by values or their language or their history. Why is it the elites are?
Yes, indeed. I mean, there are millions and millions of people throughout the West who absolutely get it, who would agree with you and me. And they have shown that they get it by voting in great number for what are called populist politicians and parties who promise a return of the Western nation and its values. The elites, I think for a variety of reasons, which I try and explain in the book, have become profoundly demoralized over more than half a century about the West itself. I think in large measure this was to do with the Holocaust having happened at the very center of Western civilization, not in some benighted backwater, but the apex of modernity itself, which was Germany. But what I'm saying in the book is this, that I think the dividing lines are not what we used to think they were. They're no longer the dividing lines between left and right, white and black, men and women, and not between cultures, not between, on the one hand, religious people and atheists, or between Jews, Christians versus Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs. I don't think that's true at all. I think that within all those groups and cultures, there are people who very strongly understand and love and want to rescue and promote the values of the West, the core values of the West, which are Jewish and Christian values, but they get it, they understand how valuable and important those are to their own lives. And on the other hand, there are people within all those groups who want to destroy the West, who think it's fundamentally bad. And what I'm calling for in the book is what I call a kind of coalition for civilization, a kind of countercultural resistance based on or drawing upon all those people from all creeds and cultures who want the West to survive, understand its value, and want to promote and help defend it. And so although the title is, how Jews and Christians can only Jews and Christians can save the West, what that means is that we all have to understand that the values that we all hold dear, including, like you yourself have just said, you may not believe in any kind of religious faith. That's fine. I don't expect people to suddenly convert to religion at all. That's not what the book is trying to say at all. But the people who actually get it, the people who understand why the West is so valuable, why its civilization is and has been so unique, why it's under threat, those people should all come together in a common cause.
To defend it. And again, so much of this comes down to the moral relativism that we've seen. I mean, that's something that I think very much came from the left, the idea that, this might work, that might work. We saw that in parenting, this might work, that might work, as opposed to, no, this is what works and this is what you should do, this is the right thing to do. Cultural relativism, the sort of idea that, all cultures are equal. And we've seen this, I think, unbelievably starkly since October the 7th, in terms of certainly the media and many of the elites and their thinking, academia and the like, they're thinking about what happened on October the 7th and the rights and wrongs on both sides in the subsequent war. And I found most of the mainstream media coverage to be abhorrent. I mean, absolutely abhorrent, dishonestly abhorrent in terms of its coverage. And it's sort of, again, even with the hostage release and the prisoner release, and almost the equivalence being given to these, a young woman being released, and, the possibility of, a baby and a toddler, we hope to God is still alive, being released, equivalent to a convicted terrorist and mass murderer being released. Well, it's the same thing and their families will be just as pleased. That moral relativism, I think, is at the actual heart of the downfall of the civilization of the West, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's a complete loss of moral compass, but also what has been so terrifying to me and to so many others watching this reaction since October 7 is its obsessional irrationality. I mean, there is something particularly frightening about seeing so many people literally losing their minds, being completely immune to facts and evidence and to reason. I mean, to be able to call the defense against genocide, which Israel has been attempting for the last 15 months, you have Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, which openly declare their intention to destroy the state of Israel and to kill every Jew. That is genocide. And Israel has had to take the measures it's had to take in order to defend itself against that. And yet we see that defense against genocide represented as genocide. Now, what's going on there? To a certain extent, you can say, well, it's tremendous ignorance, but it's something beyond that. When you looked at the faces of those people who we all saw on social media in the weeks and months after October 7, literally with their bare hands, tearing down the pictures of the hostages. They were tearing down pictures of innocent women, children, babies and men who had been kidnapped by barbaric people who were torturing them, had kidnapped them, were torturing them, had imprisoned them, were murdering them. And you looked at the faces that we saw of those people tearing those pictures down, and I saw something that was absolutely chilling. Their faces were contorted with hatred and rage, and you have to ask yourself, what is going on here? This is not a normal reaction. Even if you hate the state of Israel, This is not a normal reaction.
Tearing down a picture of a child that's been abducted. What did you make? Time is against us. I know we will talk again about this subject many times, but what did you make? I mean, the coverage of of Holocaust Memorial Day yesterday and the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, incredibly moving ceremonies. We spoke to the great-grandson of a survivor of Auschwitz yesterday on the show. But I found myself being fairly disgusted with a lot of the people who were saying all the right things, politicians expressing their concern and how, never again, we hear again and again. When an organisation, when a terrorist group says, literally, we want to do it again, and we tried, and we're going to keep doing it and keep doing it, that's literally in our constitution of what we do. When you have that equivocation, even from this Labour government, where the sort of, as part of the small arms embargo, criticism of Israel when Israel's defending itself, it seems to me to be a bit mealy-mouthed to talk about, recognising the horrors of the Holocaust in the 1940s, and then not to recognise the truth of what has been attempted on Israel and was carried out in Israel on October the 7th and since, and is threatened every single day for the rest of Israel's existence. It seems to me that politicians want it both ways.
Well, when I saw the coverage of the Auschwitz memorialization ceremonies, I thought two things, as you just said. First of all, what was said at those ceremonies was incredibly moving and right and entirely appropriate. But the disjunction between what the countries that many of those leaders were representing have been doing vis-à-vis Israel and its desperate war of survival, the double standards are really unconscionable. And, this idea, I mean, there's something quite actually obscene about it, because some of the coverage on the media, there was one particular TV station which managed to refer to the Holocaust in terms of people being
ITV's coverage. Avoided 6 million people. 6 million people were killed, and also also gypsies and gay people. It did not at any point mention the Jewish people. Extraordinary.
No, they went to a great length not to. The clip I saw of Angela Rayner, she may have mentioned Jews on another occasion, I don't know. But the clip I saw she was doing the same thing. She was not mentioning Jews. It's as if there is a whole strain of thinking in the West which is not just anti-Israel. It wants to erase the whole idea of Jewish suffering on the basis that it interrupts the narrative. This is how I see it. It interrupts the narrative that Israel and the Jewish people are all powerful and therefore can't be ever victims. This is beyond disgusting and beyond terrifying, because the Holocaust, singled out the Jews. Okay, many others were murdered, sure, but nevertheless, it was a program designed specifically to exterminate the Jews alone from the world entirely.
Absolutely.
Not just from Germany.
Absolutely. It is utterly extraordinary to me. I am very, very ashamed of an awful lot of people. I mean, everyone at the BBC who's not standing up against the fact they won't even refer to Hamas as a terrorist group. That alone, it should be a resigning matter, but there we are. Melanie Phillips, I know we'll talk again. I so appreciate you joining us. It's always fascinating to hear your thinking. Her new book, The Builder's Stone, How Jews and Christians Built the West and Why Only They Can Save It. Just some news just come in while we were speaking. The Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp was granted an urgent question in Parliament while we were speaking into that review into extremism that was leaked this morning. And answering that question, not the Home Secretary, but Security Minister Dan Jarvis, he said that many documents are produced across government as part of commission work which are not implemented, which do not constitute government policy. This work did not recommend an expansion in the definition of extremism, and there are not and have never been any plans to do so. The leaked documents were not current or new government policy. Nothing to see here. Claire, just as someone as a former Home Office advisor, just briefly, your reaction to that?
I mean, that is just, if we protest and protest and protest, it will go away and nobody will pay any attention to it.
Someone was being paid by taxpayers' money to produce that document.
Absolutely, and I think we need to know who it is and how much influence they have.
Absolutely, thank you very much indeed. 12:48 is the time. Up next, we're going to be at War with Claire. Going to be talking also about Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, basically sidelining women's health. That's up next. This is Talk.
What they did in 2019-20 was to introduce a new category of terrorism, which they called no ideology. 2/3 of the referrals, which were Islamism, suddenly became no ideology. Somebody who could have been picked up by the system was ignored. This ends up with 3 little girls dead and 23 other children and their teacher terrorized pretty much for the rest of their lives.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Claire Pistol still with me. Delighted to be joined right now by Stephen Dorrell. He's a former health secretary for the Conservatives and is a former chair of the NHS Confederation now. He's always at pains for me to point out, now a Liberal Democrat. A very good afternoon to you, Stephen.
Hello, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining us.
That out.
Always. I know you like to disassociate yourself. We love the fact that Tories, Lib Dems, pretty much the same. It's what a lot of us have been saying for a long time. Let's talk about the health service.
I wish that were true, but that's another subject.
Health Secretary Wes Streeting has been accused of basically, dumping women's health targets from the NHS plan, putting women's health at risk. He's dropped his particular targets from a new NHS plan. He's accused of sidelining female patients. We've got new guidance for NHS trusts being published on Thursday. But there was a target previously to roll out women's health hubs in all parts of the country. That's been dropped. The Women's Health Ambassador, Dame Leslie Regan, she says he should think again. It would be very disappointing. He says we can't afford not to have that target. Is there any evidence that this is going to impact women's health?
Well, I think we need to separate the specific of the women's health hubs, which I think is a good idea. But in the end, is only justified if it's going to deliver better health outcomes for women. The headline suggests that women's health targets in totality are being dropped. And that seems to me to be an extraordinary headline, and I very much hope it's not true. It's extraordinary in particular because that headline appears the same day that another headline says that prostate cancer is the most prevalent cause of cancer in the UK. Well, there are not many women suffer from prostate cancer.
Indeed, any.
Not many men suffer from cervical cancer. Yeah. How can you have sensible health targets that don't identify the difference between men and women?
Well, indeed. I mean, much the NHS, they still talk about pregnant people, for goodness sake. But this thing, how much do these targets matter? Because, do you need to have a target for a GP to refer someone to a screening and a consultant to take it seriously and tests to be done and action to be taken? Do doctors and nurses, apparently angels and paragons, do they only act because there's a target and they need to tick a box, or do they just treat the people who turn up who are ill?
Well, of course, the answer to your question is that overwhelmingly people deal with the situation in front of them in a way that they believe represents the clinical priorities and the interests of the patients. But I do think targets do have a role to play. I'm not in favour of moving away from all targets. It's an old saying, isn't it, that when everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. I do think the health service does need to focus on priorities.
Keeping people alive. Keeping people alive. That's a good one.
Well, I was going to a more specific one, actually. Cancer outcomes is one of the major causes of death. Our cancer outcomes in this country are not as good as other comparator countries elsewhere in the developed world.
None of our outcomes are as good as most other Western countries. You know that. But my thing is, if I've got cancer, well, that's great. If cancer is going to be the target. What if I've got heart disease, but cancer's the target? Then I'd rather that heart disease. Surely whatever you've got that could kill you, you'd rather was the target.
Well, surely what you actually want to see, isn't it, is that our public health system challenges itself to match the outcome records that are achieved by other comparable health systems elsewhere in the world.
We should do that. we should think about doing that sometime. That would be a great idea, instead of slapping people on the back for hitting some target, a made-up target. I mean, even our targets are always pathetic. They're always like, 80% of people will be treated within, 3 months. Oh, whoopity-doo-dah. Should be 100% and it should be 3 days. But, there we are.
Well, and there is a difference, isn't there, between a target that says we want health hubs for women, which I think are a sensible way of developing health systems, but probably not everywhere. What works in central London may not work in rural Lincolnshire. So what really matters is not the way the health system is organised, it's the outcomes it achieves for the people who rely on it. And we're very good sometimes at talking about system targets, and rather than the outcomes that are achieved for patients.
That is a really big problem. I think that's a real sort of NHS management problem, in terms of the attitudes of the management, the consultants and everybody else, as opposed to just, we need to treat people who are ill.
Well, quite. I agree that sometimes the health service, the former chief exec David Nicholson used to say that we hit the target and miss the point. It's a very good way of putting it.
Very good, yeah.
But it isn't just the health service, in fairness. It's also the political those responsible for the political debate about health that too often focus on management targets rather than on outcomes achieved for patients.
Absolutely. Stephen Dorrell, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Former Conservative, now Liberal Democrat, but he was the former Conservative Health Secretary. It's interesting that Claire Pearsall, so health targets for women, there was an argument, wasn't there, for years, breast cancer. There was a massive focus on breast cancer, and breast cancer survival rates went up magnificently. Women are more aware, they're checking themselves, they go to the doctor, their treatment hubs and the like. But then, then people complain, well, hold on, men are being ignored. And then men's cancers are being ignored. I mean, women's cancers get ignored because people, for some reason, think that trans-identified men can have women's cancers. But there we are.
Yeah, which they clearly can't. But I just want the NHS to concentrate on curing people, treating people, having access to GPs. I mean, it's just the real basic.
You just talk madness. I don't know why we have you on the show. Just talk absolutely. What a load of nonsense. Why on earth would the NHS do that?
I don't know. It's a radical idea that's what it's there for.
Never catch on. Claire Pearsall, thank you very much indeed. She is, of course, talking common sense. Ian Collins, as well, is here to tell us what's happening.
Treating people on the basis of logic and need. I mean, what kind of craziness, what sort of guest list have you got here today?
I know, exactly. We're not having a back. We're not having a back.
I've never seen her go like this.
She's gone crazy. She's gone crazy. She's probably a far-right bigot for suggesting it.
Well, we are going to pick up on the far-right. Everyone's a far-right bigot.
Everyone's
a far-right bigot. It's kind of interesting. I don't know how you define extreme. I mean, extremism manifests in all sorts of forms, and clearly